Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I got Saitama's physique and started to hunt down red hair pirates. Chapter 81. 3 days later. Grand Line Com Belt, in the palace of Nine Snake Island. Hancock was wearing a luxurious pajamas, lazily sitting on the bed to rest. Just then, an impatient old voice came. "Snake Princess, I heard that you attacked a warship on duty." The mother-in-law hurried over to question. "Stop making so much noise, kick her out." Hancock was a little impatient. Every time, the mother-in-law would appear out of nowhere, and the guards at the door didn't notice it at all. "I don't know how she did it." "Wait, Snake Princess. You're in big trouble, you know. The warship on duty you attacked belongs to the $1 branch base under the jurisdiction of General Luogia." "Huh, Luogia Admiral." Hearing this, the faces of the two sisters Sonia and Gorud next to them suddenly changed. "In this sea, you can provoke anyone, but you must not provoke the G1 branch base." "As for why, is there any need to say? Because in the G1 branch base, there is a great evil god like Luogia. Red hair, Kaido, Bigmom, Whitebeard, Golden Lion. These big figures standing at the top of the sea were all defeated by Luogia. It is conceivable that Luogia's strength is so terrifying that it's not an exaggeration to say that he is a contemporary god." The two sisters looked at each other and saw worry in each other's eyes. This time, they really got into big trouble. Luogia. Hancock's beautiful face also showed a slight fluctuation. Although her personality is arrogant, narcissistic, domineering and willful, she is not stupid at all. Facing an invincible existence like Luogia, even she felt deeply pressured. "Yes, it's the invincible Luogia Admiral. We can't afford to offend such a big man." The mother-in-law looked solemn and worried. "Sister, you attacked the warships of the G1 branch base, and Luogia Admiral will probably not let it go. When that happens, Arlish Island may be in trouble." Sonia and Gorud both showed panic on their faces. "I'm so annoyed, all of you get out." Hancock's temper changed so quickly that everyone present was caught off guard. "Wait a minute, Snake Princess, go and remove the petrified people now, maybe we can save the situation, otherwise." Grandma Za looked anxious. "What else? Who told them to have lust for me? They deserve to be turned into stone. Anyway, I will be forgiven in the end." At this point, Hancock's beautiful face showed a delicate blush. Grandma Za and the female guards present suddenly had their heartbeats accelerated. Even though they were all women, they couldn't resist this peerless charm. The next second, Hancock kicked Grandma Za away without warning, and a scream came from the window. "Snake Princess, how can you treat Grandma Za like this?" The guards were immediately pale when they saw this scene. "Humph, are you going to blame Jia Shen?" Hancock raised his head and pointed at everyone, his expression very arrogant. "How can we blame Lady Snake Princess?" The female guards' eyes were full of love, and they were conquered by Hancock's charm again. After everyone left, Hancock was the only one left in the room. At this moment, she was only wearing a bathrobe, and she was extremely attractive. She had a beautiful face, skin as white as cream, a graceful figure, and a charming temperament. It was hard to imagine. All these advantages were gathered in one woman. It can be said that Hancock was God's perfect creation. In addition to a perfect body, Hancock also had a smart heart. But no matter how smart she was a little overwhelmed at this time. In fact, she didn't make a move at all at the beginning, but the Marines on duty on the warship were fascinated by her as soon as they saw her, and then they turned into stone one by one. And Hancock only wanted to punish them, so he didn't remove their petrification. But who would have thought that it would turn out like this in the end? Although she was a Shichibukai, she offended Luogia, and it was estimated that the world government and the Marine would not stand on her side. However, she also had her own pride. Even if she died, she was unwilling to bow to others again. Otherwise, she would not awaken Conqueror's haki. Die. Hancock bit her lip, her eyes and hands revealed a trace of fragility. No matter how domineering and willful she is in normal times, it is just a mask to hide the fear in her heart. This is directly related to her being a slave of celestial dragons. At this moment, a panicked voice came from outside the door. "Snake Lady, something bad has happened. A powerful enemy has invaded the island." Hancock, who was still very fragile the moment before, regained the demeanor of the empress the next moment. She tore off her robe and put it on her body. As soon as she walked out of the room, she saw a panicked female guard. What enemy? Hancock asked coldly. It seems to be Luo Jia, Admiral from the G1 branch base. The female guard's voice trembled slightly. Humph, just one person scared you like this. Hancock snorted coldly, and then she walked directly out of the palace. At the same time, the coast of Snake Free Island. Countless female warriors of 9 Snake Island drew their bows and arrows, surrounding a man wearing a cloak of justice. There are no guns or cannons on 9 Snake Island, but each of them can use armed color, so the power of bows and arrows is no less than that of guns. They looked at the man in front of them, and in addition to vigilance and fear, there was also a touch of astonishment on their faces. Because the man in front of them was so handsome. They have been with Hancock for many years, and have a certain immunity to beautiful things. But even so, the moment they saw Luo Jia, they were still amazed by his handsomeness. As for Luo Jia, even though he was surrounded by many female warriors, his expression was still very calm. In this way, the two sides confronted each other. However, no one attacked, but they did not dare to put down their weapons easily. Well, the foundation is quite good. Luo Jia glanced at the female warriors, and a hint of admiration appeared in his eyes. Of course, this is not an appreciation of their beauty, but an appreciation of their strength. The next moment, the female warriors made way for them, and then a beautiful woman came walking in high heels. This woman not only has a stunning appearance, but also a charming temperament. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is the living Daji. And this woman is the Empress Hancock. Snake Lady, this is Luo Jia, Admiral. He said he is not here to ask for punishment. Not here to ask for punishment. Hancock's pretty face changed slightly when she heard this. Since you are not here to ask for punishment, does it mean that you have forgiven the 9 Snake Island for its disrespect? The mother-in-law rushed over at this time and looked at Luo Jia. Luo Jia kept looking at Hancock, her eyes full of appreciation, as if she was looking at a perfect work of art. Hearing what Grandma Za said, Luo Jia nodded. That's right, but although I don't intend to ask for punishment, at least you have to apologize to me and return our subordinates to their original state. Great, Your Excellency is really generous. Quote, Grandma Za was surprised, and then looked at Hancock. Snake Princess, since the other party doesn't pursue it, as long as you apologize. As she spoke, Grandma Za's face changed, and cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Because Hancock had a frosty face at this time, he had already picked her up. Who allowed you to make decisions for me? After speaking, Hancock threw Grandma Za directly out, and disappeared in front of everyone like a parabola. Snake, Lady Snake, how could you? Seeing this scene, the female warriors couldn't help but exclaim. Can you bear to blame me? Hancock snorted coldly. The charm exuded by that arrogant look was irresistible even to women. Of course we won't blame Lady Snake. The whole audience was full of love, and completely immersed in Hancock's charm. As for the mother-in-law who was thrown away, they had already forgotten about it. On the other side, hey, it's really as rumored, arrogant and willful. Looking at this scene in front of him, Luo Jia smiled lightly. As if he heard Luo Jia's teasing, Hancock looked at Luo Jia again. When his eyes touched Luo Jia, Hancock's heart was also amazed. I didn't pay much attention just now, but now I look carefully and find that this man is indeed handsome and unparalleled, and the charm he exudes seems to be on par with her. However, Hancock didn't take it to heart and calmly came to Luo Jia. In front of Luo Jia. I'm not interested in an apology, do you have the heart to blame me? Hancock was very arrogant one second, and pretended to be pitiful in front of Luo Jia the next second. Hee, sister, who are you acting like a spoiled child to? I won't fall for your tricks. Luo Jia looked like she was smiling. The other party was not affected by my charm. How is it possible? Hancock has always been absolutely confident in his charm, but today it didn't work on Luo Jia. This made her feel a little surprised. Humph, I will definitely be forgiven no matter what I do wrong, because I'm so beautiful. Hancock held his head high, as if it was a matter of course. Although there was such a scene in the original book, Luo Jia couldn't help but twitching when he saw the real person doing it. Hancock's charm did not have no effect on Luo Jia. It's just that this effect has been completely offset by Luo Jia's own charm. Of course, this does not affect Luo Jia's appreciation of Hancock's peerless beauty. In other words, you are not going to apologize. Luo Jia's tone was a little cold. Quote. Seeing that Luo Jia was not affected by her charm, Hancock was a little dissatisfied. She didn't believe that anyone could resist her charm, and the other party was probably holding back. In this case, fall down at my feet. Marrow mellow. Hancock shot out a heart-shaped beam of light from his palm, instantly hitting Luo Jia's body. Quote. But the next moment, Hancock was shocked. Because Luo Jia, who was hit by Marrow mellow, was still not affected at all. The ability of the sweet fruit is similar to the rule power of the reversal fruit. Luo Jia's eyes flashed with a strange color. He found that this kind of rule power, as long as the conditions are met, is basically unsolvable. If it weren't for Luo Jia's body, it would have transcended this world. In the case of love, Luo Jia would probably turn into stone after being hit by Hancock. How could you not have any reaction at all? Hancock's expression finally changed. Luo Jia took on her ability head-on, and did not use hockey to defend herself, but was still not affected at all. Could it be that the other party really ignored his charm? Hancock was incredulous. It is undeniable that you are beautiful, but I just simply admire your beauty. It is impossible for me to fall for you. Quote. Okay, this farce is almost over. Apologize as soon as possible, and then change my subordinates back to their original state. Luo Jia crossed his arms and had a half-smile on his face. Impossible. Hearing Luo Jia's words, Hancock refused arrogantly. Not only that, she also rushed towards Luo Jia and kicked her without saying a word. Perfume femur. Seeing that the other party was so willful, Luo Jia shook her head helplessly and let her kick her body. Bang! Hancock kicked out a gas explosion cloud, which was powerful enough to destroy a large warship. However, in addition to causing the collapse of the Earth, it had no effect on Luo Jia at all. How is it possible? This guy actually blocked my perfume femur with his body. Hancock was shocked. Hancock had already used all his strength in that kick just now. It is estimated that Marine Admiral would be injured if he did not open the armed color. But what about Luo Jia? It actually had no effect at all. The other party was immune to her charm, and now she is immune to her power. Could it be that Luo Jia is really immune to everything? Hancock was unwilling to give up and kicked Luo Jia again. Sister, that's enough. If you continue to mess around, don't blame me for being violent. Luo Jia stretched out her palm and instantly grasped Hancock's jade feet. Point 0. Hancock was fixed in the air in an indecent posture, and a deep black flashed by. Fats. Black. Luo Jia's eyes lit up. But he still had integrity, so he immediately looked away. Hancock's pretty face flushed and her mentality exploded on the spot after being treated like this by Luo Jia. Since she became the emperor of Nine Snake Island, she has never suffered such humiliation. And Luo Jia's attitude was like an adult teaching a little girl, which simply drove Hancock crazy. Let go of me. You hurt me. Hancock found that he couldn't get away, so he shouted at Luo Jia. Hey. Speak clearly, you make me feel like you are nothing. Quote. Luo Jia let go immediately and took a step back. Lecher. Hancock blushed and snorted coldly. She knew she was no match for Luo Jia, so she simply retreated. Snake Princess, are you okay? At this time, the female warriors gathered around, looking nervous and comforting. Some other female warriors pointed their bows and arrows at Luo Jia, with fierce expressions on their faces. You dare to insult Snake Princess, it's simply unforgivable. 17. Sisters, kill this man. A female warrior shouted, and immediately a group of people swarmed up, ready to surround and kill Luo Jia. But the next moment, an indescribable conqueror's burst shook all directions in an instant. Give you some color, and you think you can open a dying room. Luo Jia's face was grim, like a tyrant who ruled the world. At this moment, the world was silent. The next second, a female warrior from Nine Snake Island fell to the ground with a plop, followed by the second, the third. Like dominoes, people fell one after another, and the scene was very spectacular. In the end, there were only a few people who could barely maintain a clear consciousness. These people were also dizzy and unstable at this time, and their hearts were terrified. This conquerors, so strong. Hancock was almost stunned by Luojia's conquerors, and a trace of disbelief appeared on her face. Because she could clearly feel that Luojia's conqueror's haki was at least several levels higher than hers. How could she not be frightened? The female warriors of Nine Snake Island were determined, and they had experienced their conquerors for many years, so they had a certain resistance to conquerors. But Luojia's conquerors was like materialization, sweeping the whole place in an instant. Except for a few people, all the members were stunned, and even she herself was slightly dizzy. What a terrifying conquerors! Sister, sister. That man's haki is too strong. Sonia and Gorudo, with cold sweat on their foreheads, looked at Luojia with fear. They had never seen such a terrifying conqueror's haki, and their sister's conquerors was simply a world apart compared to it. On the other side, Luojia stood in front with his arms around his chest, but the domineering aura almost made them kneel on the spot. Now, have you had enough of the trouble? Luojia looked indifferent and spoke coldly. In fact, Luojia admired Hancock very much. Whether it was beauty or charm, she was perfect. But she was so beautiful that she was constantly showing off in front of him. Luojia naturally couldn't tolerate it. Willfulness also depends on the object. Hancock bit his silver teeth lightly, not knowing how to answer. And when Luojia got serious, his momentum was completely different from before, full of majesty that made her tremble. But she would never tolerate such a soft submission. How could there be a man in this world who was not attracted to me at all? In fact, this was what Hancock was most unwilling to accept. Hancock's charm had an impact on everyone, but the impact was different in size. Her charm still had an impact on Hawkeye, Marine Admiral, 4 emperors and others. It was just because their haki was strong enough to resist this influence. But Luojia didn't use haki to resist the whole time. This was why Hancock couldn't accept it. I don't believe it. The other party must have used some power to suppress it forcefully. Hancock was unwilling to accept it. She wanted to prove herself. You want me to apologize? Absolutely impossible. Hancock's tone was very firm. You just apologized and you can save Nine Snake Island from a catastrophe. Isn't this worthwhile? Luojia shook her head helplessly. Luojia was also quite troubled by such a willful woman. If it weren't for the sake of a woman, and a beautiful woman, Luojia would have killed her long ago. At this time, why did the mother-in-law appear again? Snake Princess, you can't be so willful anymore. If you refuse to apologize again, then Nine Snake Island will really be destroyed. Grandma Za was really anxious this time. After seeing Luojia's conquerors, she was already terrified. With such a terrifying conqueror's existence, His Majesty cannot be violated. But Hancock offended Luojia again and again. If he really annoyed Luojia, the consequences would be really disastrous. What's more, this man is not an existence that we can contend with. Grandma Za continued to persuade Hancock. Even if this country is destroyed, I will never apologize. Hancock's eyes were stubborn and domineering. Even if she died, she would never give in, because she was the pirate queen. Oh, very good awareness. Seeing Hancock's will to die rather than surrender, Luojia's eyes flashed with admiration. At the same time, his evaluation of Hancock in his heart went up a level. Never give in to anyone, beautiful beyond compare, standing proudly above everything. This is the attitude that the pirate queen should have. This kind of top-notch woman deserves a card from Luojia. Without saying anything, Luojia used the mutual love card on Hancock. The next second, Hancock was in a trance for a moment. Luojia's image had been deeply imprinted in his heart and could never be erased. Oh. The most intuitive external manifestation was that Hancock's eyes looking at Luojia were no longer as sharp as before, but unconsciously had a hint of tenderness. What's wrong with me? Hancock's pretty face blushed inexplicably, and Luojia popped up in her heart from time to time, causing her heartbeat to accelerate suddenly. Since you are determined not to apologize, I will not leave. I will stay here until you apologize. Luo Jia looked at Hancock and smiled, with a strange meaning in her smile. Hancock, who would rather die than surrender, stimulated Luo Jia's desire to conquer. Coupled with the influence of the mutual affection card, he did not believe that he could not conquer the other party. You, then stay alone. Hancock wanted to say a few harsh words, but when she saw Luo Jia's face, she felt a little reluctant. So, Hancock snorted at Luo Jia, but that feeling was more like acting coquettish. I am afraid that even Hancock himself did not realize this. When he saw Luo Jia staring at him all the time, Hancock immediately turned around and left with a red face. But for some reason, she felt a little happy in her heart, and the corners of her mouth rose unconsciously. 2:13. Looking at Hancock laughed so capriciously, and Granny Za had a headache, and then shallily saluted Lu Jia. Sir, don't worry, I didn't come here to cause trouble for you, but I won't leave this island until she apologizes. Luo Jia interrupted Granny Za's words directly. He must deal with Hancock, otherwise his subordinates who have turned into stone will not be able to change back. Well, I'll go and persuade Snake Princess again. Hearing this, Granny Za breathed a sigh of relief. Although the majesty of the Overlord is inviolable, this situation is not absolute. For example, Red Hair would not get angry if the Bandit King poured wine on him, but would laugh instead. Of course, it is also possible that Red Hair is afraid of the Bandit King funny face. Fortunately, Luo Jia also belongs to this category, otherwise their 9-snake island might be gone. Granny Za breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to persuade Hancock again. Unfortunately, Hancock is also a self-centered person. Not surprisingly, the mother-in-law kept pestering him, but was thrown out by the impatient Hancock again. 9-Snake Island Palace. Hancock curled up on the couch, staring blankly. When she was in a daze, Luo Jia's figure would appear in her mind. This feeling made her crazy, but she also felt a little sweet. You want me to apologize? It's absolutely impossible. As for your subordinates, don't even think about changing back. Hancock looked proud, but in fact, she hoped that Luo Jia could stay here. Her proud look, coupled with the blush on her cheeks, exuded amazing charm, which directly made the maids infatuated. Gradually, Hancock, who was in a daze, finally woke up, and at the same time felt hungry. You, go and prepare dinner for me. Hancock ordered the maid. After the maid responded obediently, she immediately retreated to prepare. Hancock was the emperor of 9-Snake Island, and of course he had his own imperial kitchen. In the hall of the imperial kitchen, there was a 5-meter-long table, which was already filled with various exquisite foods. Hancock temporarily put Luo Jia's matter aside and began to eat elegantly. However, at this moment, an abrupt voice came, instantly interrupting her eating time. Yo yo yo, isn't this dinner? I'm hungry too. The next moment, in the astonished eyes of everyone, Luo Jia swaggered in. Then, she sat next to Hancock and began to eat heartily. This scene not only shocked the maids, but also Hancock. She was holding a steak with a fork at the corner of her mouth, and her protective look was very protective. What's wrong? Eat quickly, don't be polite to me. After saying that, Luo Jia also snatched Hancock's steak and swallowed it in one bite, and showed a satisfied expression. Luo Jia, who allowed you to be so presumptuous? When Hancock reacted, his emotions immediately broke out. Hancock wanted to overturn the whole table, but Luo Jia held her down first. Hey, wasting food is shameful. Luo Jia ignored the angry Hancock and continued to eat. Hancock was held down by Luo Jia's shoulders, feeling angry and shy. But she was a proud woman after all, and in order to vent her dissatisfaction, she kicked Luo Jia directly. But this time, Hancock subconsciously restrained her strength because she didn't want to hurt Luo Jia. It has to be said that when a woman faces someone she likes, her IQ will plummet. So, the classic posture was repeated again. Luo Jia grabbed the jade foot with her hand, and a sacred white flashed by. White. Luo Jia was shocked. Hancock's panties, could they change color? With this doubt in his mind, Luo Jia immediately let her go, and then quickly stuffed a few pieces of steak into his mouth. I'm full, you eat slowly. After saying that, Luo Jia disappeared instantly. Lecher. Hancock's pretty face flushed, partly because of anger and partly because of shame. Finally, Hancock stuffed a piece of cake into his mouth, looking like a pufferfish. The maids looked at each other, not daring to come up to dissuade him, and all hid far away. They hated Luogia for daring to offend Lady Snake so rudely, but they also admired her inexplicably. Looking at the entire 9-Snake Island, I'm afraid only Gia dared to treat Lady Snake like this. Moreover, Lady Snake didn't seem to be particularly angry. Could it be that Lady Snake liked this kind of tune? The maids all had the same idea. Hancock finished all the food before finally stopping. Her stomach wasn't full, but she felt a little wronged. Since she met Luogia, Hancock felt that she had been split into two personalities. She was angry and annoyed with Luogia, but at the same time she missed him. Hancock was so tired that she simply went to take a hot spring bath to get rid of her fatigue. Otherwise, she felt that if she continued like this, she would go crazy sooner or later. Imperial Bath Room. Just as Hancock took off her coat and was about to step into the hot spring, she found that there was already a man lying in the hot spring. Oh my, you're here to take a bath too. What a coincidence, taking a bath after a full meal, this feeling is simply too good. Give me another hour, then it will be your turn. If you can't wait, you can take a bath together. Anyway, I don't mind. Luogia put a towel on her head, looking satisfied. Don't mention how leisurely it is. Luogia, get out of here, Hancock shouted, but the voice was not loud, and it sounded like something annoying to others. Oh, this is your fault. As a host, how can you treat guests like this? Luogia said while using hair algae. As a man, you actually tossed a woman like me for a long time. Do you still have manners? Hancock's face was flushed, and he was shaking with anger. Tisk, not hitting women is the greatest manners. Oh, I can't even take a bath peacefully, you are so annoying. Luogia stood up, put on her clothes, and disappeared. At the same time, Hancock was already stagnant in the same place, because at the moment Luogia stood up, she saw something she shouldn't have seen. At that moment, Hancock felt that her head had exploded, and her mind was blown blank. What on earth was that? Hancock's legs were weak, and the whole person was paralyzed on the ground, with both fear and unforgettable in his heart. Seeing the towel floating on the hot spring, Hancock picked it up for some reason, and then used it to scrub himself. Smelling the remaining scent on the towel, Hancock trembled in the hot spring. The next day, Luogia's tossing began again. There was no coercion, but Luogia would suddenly appear no matter what Hancock did. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, nap, sleep, bath. During this time, Hancock felt that Luogia had almost become a part of her life. Speaking of it, I don't know if it's a habit, when Luogia didn't show up, Hancock even missed him a little. And after these days of getting along, Hancock found Luogia really handsome. Especially the temperament on his body, which simply fascinated Hancock. Just 1 week, Hancock's mind is now full of Luogia, whether he opens his eyes or closes his eyes. From being unbearable at the beginning, to being annoyed, to having strange feelings, and finally to falling in love. It only took a week. Inside the palace, Hancock was staring at the ceiling blankly, still recalling the wonderful feeling just now. And Luogia has already put on his clothes, shaking a glass of wine in his hand. Delicious. Luogia took a sip and said with a double meaning. Hancock finally came to her senses, but she didn't even have the strength to move a finger. Why, can't you move? Luogia smiled. Hancock had been fighting with him before, and finally gave in today. Of course, this was a voluntary and natural surrender. But in the battle just now, she was very fierce. It seemed that she wanted to defeat Luogia in the battle and completely restore her dignity. Hancock looked complicated, and finally let go of her posture and spoke in the most gentle voice. Why would a man like you work for the world government? From the contact these days, Hancock also roughly understood what kind of person Luogia was. He did what he wanted, was lawless, and had a transcendent demeanor that was superior to the world. And a person like him would actually be a Marine. Would he actually work for the world government? This made Hancock unable to believe it. Who told you? I work for the world government. Luogia chuckled and drank the wine in one gulp. Aren't you a Marine? Hancock frowned slightly, unable to understand the meaning of this sentence. You can't just look at the surface, everything has two sides. And I'm just a Marine who is interested in it. When I don't like the world government, I will still oppose it when I should. Anyway, it depends on my mood. Luo Jia shrugged, not caring at all. After hearing Luo Jia's words, Hancock finally felt relieved. This is the man I admire. That is to say, you are not on the side of the world government. Hancock wanted to confirm again. When did I say that I was on the side of the world government? Hearing this, Luo Jia was a little speechless. He never said such a thing. Is it all based on conjecture? Although he is a Marine, he is nominally under the jurisdiction of the world government and should be a lackey of the world government in theory. But this is only nominal and theoretical. Not to mention others, Luo Jia himself does not listen to the orders of the world government at all, and even the orders of the naval headquarters. Not only him, but there are actually a lot of people in the Marine who do not agree with the world government. Or they do not agree with the 5 elders and the celestial dragons. The Marine and the world government are both superiors and subordinates, but there are various differences in their concepts. The world government is loyal to the celestial dragons, and although there are many factions within the Marine, the purpose is still to run through justice and maintain peace in the sea. So, when these two different concepts are put together at the same time, conflicts will often occur. In fact, this conflict of concepts can be seen from many details. For example, in the Ohara incident, the world government demanded to kill all, but Aokiji still let Robin go privately. When Luffy beat up celestial dragons, the world government still demanded to kill them all, but Kizaru still deliberately let all the supernovas go. When hunting down the red hair pirates, the world government demanded to arrest them all, but Luo Jia let them go privately. As for the most typical representative, it is the master and apprentice pair of Akainu and Rob Lucci. In the original work, after Akainu became the Marine Marshal, because of different ideas from CPO Rob Lucci, the two began to confront each other directly, not caring about the former master-apprentice friendship at all. There are also Akainu and the 5 elders, who have had many ideological conflicts. So, the relationship between Marine and world government is actually very subtle. Hearing Luo Jia say this, Hancock immediately put aside all his concerns. Because men like Luo Jia absolutely disdain to lie. In other words, you are only a Marine in name. Of course, I can also be a real Marine, and the autonomy is in my hands. Luo Jia smiled at Hancock. Yes, I'm sorry. Hancock looked complicated, bit his lips lightly, and finally apologized to Luo Jia. Forget it, since you are already my woman, there is no need to apologize. As long as you take the initiative to remove the petrification ability and let my subordinates return to their original state. Luo Jia shook her head. Okay, I will restore all your subordinates later, but there is one thing to be stated, I am not your woman. Hancock took a deep breath and regained the style of the Empress. Tisk tisk. You change your face faster than turning a book, it turns out that women are all eels. Luo Jia couldn't help but sigh in amazement. Humph. Hancock snorted lightly, too lazy to pay attention to Luo Jia's teasing. Don't be so willful to me at ordinary times, otherwise, I will let you die completely next time. Luo Jia spoke slowly. After speaking, he turned around and disappeared in a flash. By the time Hancock realized what was happening, Luo Jia had already disappeared. Looking at the direction where Luo Jia left, Hancock sighed inexplicably, with a complex feeling in his heart. Luo Jia had just let her die once, and she had experienced the kind of wonder she had never experienced before. I'm afraid that I will never be able to leave this man for the rest of my life. Moshimoshi. Luo Jia, who had already left, suddenly heard a ring on her phone. On the other side of the Den Den Mushi, Ain's voice came, Commander, the on-duty troops that were petrified before have been restored to their original state. Well, I know. After saying that, Luo Jia hung up the Den Den Mushi. At this time, Luo Jia stood on the edge of the coast, looking at Hancock on the top floor of the palace from a distance, with a hint of satisfaction on his face. Hancock not only apologized, but also took the initiative to remove his ability. It seems that Luo Jia's efforts these days have not been in vain. Of course, Luo Jia himself also enjoyed it. But the final training was still a failure. I didn't make her love me to the point of death. Quote. Luo Jia shook his head, feeling a little depressed. In fact, Luogia didn't know that he had become Hancock's only one. It's just that Hancock is a Tsunere type, so Luogia had such an illusion. That's all. When we meet again in the future, I will conquer her completely. Thinking of this, Peigia couldn't help but smile again. 3 Get Money Jiao. Days later, somewhere in the sea area of New World. The G1 branch warship that Luogia was riding on was returning to the G1 branch base. Suddenly, the sea water surged wildly, causing the entire warship to vibrate violently. It was as if something was about to rush out from the bottom of the sea. Luogia, who was basking in the sun, slowly opened his eyes and looked out of the porthole. At this time, a supergiant sea king suddenly appeared on the sea, looking a bit like Godzilla. Fortunately, this warship is sturdy and sea stone is installed on the bottom. Otherwise, the tsunami caused by the sea kings alone would be enough to submerge a warship. Supergiant sea kings. How is it possible? This is not the deep sea. How can a supergiant sea king come up here? The Marines looked at the supergiant sea king that was as big as a mountain, and they couldn't help but show fear on their faces. Although Luogia was on the warship, the fear brought by this behemoth made them feel scared instinctively. Seeing the giant sea king's opening its mouth, as if ready to swallow the warship in one gulp, Luogia expressed his helplessness. Really, can't you let me take a nap in peace? But the next moment, Luogia seemed to have discovered something interesting. There are other people. Interesting. Luogia suddenly became alert and teleported outside. At the same time, on the deck of the G1 branch warship, the Marines were all terrified. And the bloody mouth of the Sea Kings had already bitten the warship. At the critical moment, a black lightning flashed through the void and directly penetrated the huge body of the Sea Kings. There was a bang. The Sea Kings screamed. The huge body of the Sea Kings fell on the sea, instantly raising thousands of feet of waves. Luogia Admiral. Luogia Base Captain. The Marines called them differently, but the awe and admiration contained in them were the same. Silence. Luogia shouted, and the scene immediately became quiet. At this time, Luogia found that 2 bubbles suddenly flowed out of the nostrils of the Sea King's corpse. One bubble contained a starfish, and the other bubble contained a mermaid girl with short green hair. It was her. Luogia showed a hint of surprise on his face. Luogia was certainly not unfamiliar with the mermaid in front of him. Mermaid Kami. As for the starfish, it should be her pet and master Papagu. Real person, this is not the first time I have seen it. Luogia touched his chin and couldn't help showing some interest. However, this Kami was even more confused than in the original book. It was okay for her to be swallowed by sea beasts frequently, but this time she was swallowed by super giant sea kings. Being so confused really made Luogia speechless. On the warship, the Marines also looked at the 2 creatures in surprise. We are saved, Kami. At this time, the orange starfish spoke. What? The starfish is talking. The Marines' eyes popped out on the spot. Yeah, we're saved. Kami saw that she had escaped, and immediately became heartless and happy again. But when she turned around and saw the G1 branch warship, the whole fish was instantly petrified. It's a human marine. Kami and Papagu were trembling with fear. On the G1 branch warship, Luogia looked at these 2 funny guys and was immediately shocked. Speaking of which, the route taken when leaving the branch base before was not the Fishman Island below the red line. So, Luogia almost ignored the Fishman Island. Unexpectedly, I met Kami and Papagu from the Fishman Island by chance today. Thank you for saving us. Kami recovered from the shock and bowed to Luogia on the warship. You're welcome. Luogia also had a good impression of Kami, so he waved his hand, indicating that the other party was welcome. Hearing this, Kami and Papagu bowed again to thank him, and then dived into the seabed. However, because of the appearance of the 2, Luogia became interested in the Fishman Island and wanted to go there to have a look. After all, in Luogia's opinion, the Fishman Island is indeed like a fairyland, and if there is a chance, he can take Hancock and the others to play there. But before that, Luogia first went to see the scenery of the Fishman Island for them. You guys drive the warship back to the base first, I still have things to deal with. Luogia instructed everyone, then took a deep breath and jumped into the sea below. Kami, the mermaid in the sea, was immediately shocked by Luo Jia's behavior. Why did this person jump into the sea? Is he upset? Luo Jia, who dived into the sea, did not change his expression at all. With his lung capacity, he can probably hold his breath in the sea for several years without taking a breath. Whether it is the sky, the land, or the seabed, it makes no difference to Luo Jia. At this time, Luo Jia is like a fish, swimming quickly in the seawater 10 straight to the bottom of the sea. On the other side, when Luo Jia jumped into the sea, the Marines on the G1DADG branch warship looked at each other, at a loss. That Luo Jia Admiral just jumped into the sea like this. Will there be an accident? A Marine looked worried. Nonsense, that's Luo Jia Admiral, how can a mere sea bring him down? A Marine colonel scolded him, but he was actually confused. Although he didn't think Luo Jia would drown, he was about to reach the branch base, and he suddenly disappeared. How could he explain this to Hina Vice Admiral? Thinking of this, the Marine colonel looked miserable. At this moment, 500 meters under the sea, Kami held Papagu and dived for several hundred meters before finally feeling a little relieved. The man suddenly jumped down just now, which really scared me to death, but he should be fine. Kami couldn't help but worry about Luo Jia's situation again. Although she was a mermaid, she was kind by nature, so she looked up. If Luo Jia drowned, she would be ready to save him. But when Kami looked up, she was petrified again. Even Papagu looked like he had seen a ghost. Because in their eyes, Luo Jia had no problem at all, and even swam better than the mermaids. Kami pointed at Luo Jia, and was so scared that she couldn't speak. Hello, my name is Luo Jia. You can call me a Ji, or call me Brother Jia. Luo Jia smiled at Kami. He didn't need to speak, he just needed to ventriloquize. Are you also a mermaid? Without the bubble coating, Luo Jia could actually swim in the sea easily, which really made Kami suspect that the other party was also a mermaid. I am a serious person, but I am better at swimming. Luo Jia smiled slightly, still speaking ventriloquism. Luo Jia, I seem to have heard this name somewhere. Papagu muttered to himself, but he couldn't remember it. Forget it. Anyway, there are so many people called Luo Jia, it is estimated that I have heard of this name accidentally before. Papagu didn't go into it. Thank you for saving us just now. Do you want to go to the Fishman Island? Kami also calmed down. After all, Luo Jia is a marine and should not be a bad person. As for why Kami is so sure, it is because of a woman's intuition. She will not admit that she thinks so because of Luo Jia's appearance. Yes, can you lead the way? Luo Jia smiled at Kami. He didn't have any dirty thoughts about creatures like mermaids. After all, he is just romantic, not vulgar, and at least he has moral integrity. Moreover, Whitebeard is related to the Fishman Island, and Whitebeard's death is related to himself. If there is a chance, Luo Jia can protect the Fishman Island, which is considered to give Whitebeard a face. Okay, in order to repay you for saving my life, I will be your tour guide. Kami didn't know what Luo Jia was thinking, but she agreed easily. Kami, humans can't just enter the Fishman Island. Papagu reminded him weakly. Ever since Princess Otahime was murdered and the Fishman tiger died in the pursuit of Marine, the prejudice of the Fishman Island against humans has become more and more profound. Although Jinbei has been maneuvering, it can't reverse the prejudice between races. If humans enter the Fishman Island, they may be brutally killed by some fishmen. After hearing Papagu's reminder, Kami suddenly woke up. Yes, Luo Jia is not only a human, but also a marine. Since the Fishman tiger died in the pursuit of Marine, many fishmen hate Marine. And Luo Jia is going to the Fishman Island alone, it is easy to be targeted by the brutal fishmen. We have to think of a solution. Quote, Luo Jia, if you want to go to the Fishman Island, you have to take the Marine changed clothes. Kami said with a tangled face. Luo Jia was wearing a Marine uniform, so it would be easy to be recognized. No need to change clothes. Luo Jia shook his head. Seeing Luo Jia like this, Kami could only look helpless. Okay, but you have to remember, when you get to the Fishman Island later, don't go to the place where the fishmen live. Kami could only advise here. Fishmen and mermaids are two species. Fishmen look more like fish, while mermaids look closer to humans. In short, mermaids are very cute, and fishmen are very vicious. Luogia didn't speak, just nodded. Kami and Papagu led the way in front, taking Luogia to dive into the deep sea. The deeper you go, the stronger the pressure of the sea water. But this pressure is nothing to Luogia. Not to mention 10,000 meters under the sea, even if it is 1,000,000 meters under the sea, Luogia can be relaxed and at ease without any feeling. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Kami, and this is my pet and master, Papagu. Quote. Kami led Luogia and introduced herself. During the period, Papagu even put on sunglasses and posed in a very cool style. Luogia glanced at it and shook his head. This shake of head immediately hit Papagu and made it completely wilted. Gradually, the sea water pressure became stronger and stronger, and the light on the seabed became dimmer and dimmer. Because we have come to the deep sea, the sun can no longer shine here. This is already 8,000 meters deep sea. It is impossible for humans without bubble coating to come here. Luogia, you are probably the first one. Looking at Luogia, who still looked relaxed, Kami was also amazed. The sea water pressure is of course nothing to mermaids. But for humans, it is absolutely fatal. But with such strong water pressure, Luogia still looked calm, which is terrible. What an incredible human being. Quote. Papagu was also amazed. The three continued to dive to the bottom of the sea. When they reached 9,000 meters, there was almost no light, and it was pitch black as far as the eye could see. But Luogia's eyes could see at night, and the surrounding environment seemed as bright as day in his eyes. Just when they were approaching 10,000 meters, a terrible breath suddenly appeared in the distance. Feeling this terrible breath, Luogia was very calm, but Kami and Papagu were panicked. Oh no, another super giant sea kings. Could it be attracted by Luogia's human breath? Kami looked anxious. I'm not going to be swallowed again. Although she was often swallowed by sea beasts, she was used to it. But if something unexpected happened, it would be a tragedy if she was digested this time. The next moment, a huge outline finally appeared in the dark sea water. Kami and Papagu were so scared when they saw this scene that they stared with their eyes wide open. The super giant sea kings before was just a little brother compared to the one in front of them. This is no longer a super giant sea kings, but a super large sea kings that can support Noah's Ark. This sea kings is almost as big as an elephant. It's comparable to 10 large islands. Looking at such a huge sea kings, Kami and Papagu were dumbfounded on the spot. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. The two had given up resisting. Because such a large sea king, as long as it swallows casually, all creatures within a kilometer radius will be swallowed. This super large sea kings has a strange shape, and its eyes look especially like a wise one. Although 3 people were not enough to fill its teeth, it still opened its bloody mouth. Splash! When it opened its mouth, the sea water rolled back crazily and poured into its mouth. Ah! I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Kami and Papagu screamed loudly and were about to be swallowed in the next second. This is the first time I've seen such a big sea king. The underwater world is really amazing. Luogia was very curious. What do such a big sea king eat to survive? Do they eat their own kind? Maybe they don't need to eat. The creatures in this world are really puzzling. Luogia shook his head and glared in the direction of the sea king. Buzz! An invisible majesty spread, and the sea king suddenly shuddered and was instantly scared away by Luogia's look. Silence. The whole audience was silent. Seeing this scene, Kami and Papagu opened their mouths wide, and their eyes bulged out in fear. Done. Luogia smiled faintly at the two and continued to dive to the bottom of the sea. Kami and Papagu looked at each other and finally woke up from their dreams. They continued to dive despite the shock. At this time, the two followed Luogia and suddenly turned from tour guides to tourists. The 3 continued to dive and soon came to a huge hole. This hole is the passage connecting the front half and New World, and directly above it is the Holy Land Mariajoy. After passing here, you can see the Fishman Island. Kami finally breathed a sigh of relief because they were about to get home. I'd like to ask, Luogia, what is your position in Marine? Kami couldn't help asking when she thought of Luogia's eyes, which scared away the super large sea kings. And her tone was a little more respectful, not as casual as before. Okay. Positions don't matter, just treat me as a tourist. Luo Jia smiled slightly. Kami and Papagu looked at each other and nodded at the same time. After the three of them passed through the huge hole, a dreamlike island came into view. The Fishman Island. The Fishman Island is in a double-layer coated bubble. Although it is located 10,000 meters below the sea, there is still sunshine and sky on the Fishman Island, and the ecological environment is very wonderful. This is the Fishman Island. Even Luo Jia was shocked by the scenery of the Fishman Island. No matter how beautiful it is in the animation, it is far less shocking than seeing it with your own eyes. This island is simply a dream wonderland, incredibly beautiful. Thank you for leading the way. Now that we have reached our destination, let's say goodbye. Luo Jia waved to Kami and Papagu, then drew an arc in the sea and disappeared in an instant. Kami and Papagu were left staring at each other. The Fishman Island is a double-layer bubble coating. If you don't enter or exit from the entrance, you will fall directly between the two layers of bubbles. This is also the way the Fishman Island prevents outsiders from breaking in. Luo Jia went through the two layers of bubbles directly and then landed on a beach on the Fishman Island. There are also beaches and various coral buildings in the Fishman Island. On the beach, a large group of beautiful mermaids are playing. Mermaids are rarely particularly ugly, so they are called mermaids. And the mermaid princess Shirahoshi is known as the most beautiful mermaid, and her appearance is comparable to Hancock. The scenery is beautiful, and I really didn't come to the wrong place. 643. Luo Jia showed appreciation on his face and walked a few steps on the beach. Such a dreamlike scene can be said to be the only one he has ever seen in his life. Luo Jia's sudden appearance was soon noticed by some mermaids. However, these beautiful mermaids were not afraid of Luo Jia, but gathered around curiously. In their eyes, humans are rare, and of course mermaids are even rarer in the eyes of humans. Excuse me, are you a human? A beautiful mermaid asked curiously. Yes, I am a human. Luo Jia smiled and nodded. But then again, am I really still a human? Luo Jia shook it off and quickly got rid of this idea. Humans are curious about the lives of mermaids, and mermaids are of course curious about humans. In addition, Luo Jia's appearance and temperament are the top existence even among mermaids who are famous for their beauty. So soon, the mermaids put down their guard and chatted happily with Luo Jia. If it weren't for the fact that Luo Jia didn't have a fish tail and there were no men in the mermaid tribe, they would probably think Luo Jia was a mermaid. Because the other party's appearance and temperament are really perfect. Luo Jia was surrounded by mermaids, and there was a lot of chirping around, obviously trying to attract Luo Jia's attention. Unfortunately, Luo Jia's attention had long been attracted by the Dragon Palace city above the Fishman Island. Dragon Palace City. It was the palace where King Neptune of the Fishman Island lived, and it was also where the mermaid princess Shirahoshi lived. Compared with the Fishman Island below, the scenery of Dragon Palace City was undoubtedly more beautiful and more dreamy. However, at this time, Luo Jia suddenly saw an axe from a distance, which was thrown into the Dragon Palace City. Is this the target fruit? Seeing this scene, Luo Jia immediately became interested. There is no doubt, this should be the axe that Vanderdecken X launched the so-called target curse and threw to the mermaid princess Shirahoshi. Vanderdecken X has a very strong possessiveness and jealousy. He loves Princess Shirahoshi of the Fishman Island and does not even allow Shirahoshi to spend his life with others. Because he accidentally discovered the secret that Shirahoshi can summon sea kings. So he has been plotting to gain Shirahoshi's power for himself. He threw love letters to confess his love at the beginning, and then threw various weapons after being rejected. Vanderdecken X, the user of the target fruit, interesting. Luo Jia smiled slightly and was about to take action. Suddenly, there was a noise in the distance. Oh no, why are those guys here? The mermaids' faces changed, and their tone was a little panicked. Your Excellency, please run away quickly. If they see you, your life may be in danger. The mermaids hurriedly urged Luo Jia to run away. Don't worry, it's okay. However, Luo Jia was unmoved. In the distance, several fierce-looking fishmen were holding weapons and driving away some mermaids. Although there are good and bad fishmen, most of them are very fierce. Mermaids are the opposite. Almost all of them are kind and cute. When they saw Luogia, the fishmen looked at each other. Although the tail of mermaids can also turn into 2 fish legs after the age of 30. But Luogia's feet are human at first glance, definitely not a mermaid. Humans, actually smuggled to the Fishman Island. In the eyes of fishmen, all humans are stowaways, human stowaways. Humph, these humans dared to smuggle to the Fishman Island, just get rid of them. Several fishmen suddenly showed fierce light in their eyes. That kind of ferocious aura made the surrounding mermaids fear him like a tiger. There are also 2 factions among the fishmen. One faction is the peaceful fishmen headed by Chi Ping. The other faction is the extreme fishmen headed by Hody Jones, who hate humans very much. 0. These fishmen are obviously extreme fishmen. Kill this human quickly, otherwise the guards of Longgong City will come and we won't be able to do it. It's just a human, his strength is not worth worrying about, it's easy to kill him. Several fishmen showed fierce faces and walked towards the direction where Luogia was. The fishman in the lead was dressed like a gangster, with slightly curled curly hair and a small tuft of beard on his chin. Even the mermaids showed fear when they saw him. It's Hammond, the new Fishman Pirates cadre. How come he's here? I heard he killed a human before, and he seems to be imprisoned by boss Jinbei. The Sea Knight Jinbei has a very high prestige in the Fishman Island, so the mermaids were surprised that Hammond could jump out. Hammond, how dare a human sneak into the Fishman Island? If so, then die. Hammond held a steel fork and stabbed Luogia fiercely, with a grim smile on his face. At the same time, the fishmen behind him didn't give Luogia a chance to speak, and immediately rushed forward. Just a few trash fish, I can handle them. Luogia's eyes flashed. Even though the fishmen's wrist strength is 10 times stronger than that of humans, compared to inhuman beings like Luogia, they don't even qualify to be cannon fodder. In an instant, all the fishmen froze in place, and then fell down one by one inexplicably. Looking at this scene, Peigia just shrugged his shoulders. To deal with these trash fish, Luogia didn't even need to move, he could kill them with a glare. Beings with strength lower than the Vice Admiral level were basically killed instantly by Luogia's glare. What's going on? The mermaids were shocked on the spot, and they obviously didn't react at all. Because they didn't see the blood flowing, the mermaids didn't know how Hammond and the others died. But there was one thing they were sure of, Hammond's death was definitely related to Luogia. After reacting, the mermaids panicked. And the eyes they looked at Luogia also changed from admiration at the beginning to awe. It seems Kami is right, mermen do often slaughter humans. Quote. But, I'm afraid that on the human side, mermaids and mermen are also often killed like this. Luogia shook his head. At this time, more and more mermaids gathered around, and the scene became more and more noisy. This is the place where mermaids live. Fishmen rarely come here, so most of them are mermaids. Amid the noise, a deep shout suddenly came. What happened here? When this deep shout came, the mermaids immediately stopped talking and made way. At the same time, a group of patrol engineers in armor came over. At first, the guards thought that Hammond, who had just been released, had caused some trouble again. Unexpectedly, when they came over, Hammond had fallen to the ground, and they also saw a human. Hammond was killed. Human. There should be no human entering the Fishman Island recently. Could it be a stowaway? Wait, he is a human marine. Did he kill Hammond? After seeing Luogia's marine uniform, the expressions of several patrolmen immediately became solemn. The Fishman Island is one of the member states of the world government, and the Fishman tiger was also killed by Marine. Therefore, the Fishman Island's attitude towards Marine can be described as hatred and fear. Sir, please explain what happened here. The patrol captain stepped forward and his tone became very cautious. As you can see, I killed these fishmen. Luogia spread his hands and looked indifferent. Hearing this, the patrol captain's face darkened. Even if you are a human marine, you can't hurt the residents of the Fishman Island casually. The patrol captain said in a deep voice. Well, I won't waste my saliva with you. Luogia did not answer, but a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. Then, a terrifying conqueror spread, sweeping in all directions in an instant. The next second, whether it was the patrol team or the mermaids watching, they all lost consciousness in an instant, and then fell to the ground collectively. This way, we don't have to waste everyone's time. I'm really a genius. Luo Jia shrugged. For this wave of operations, please call him a time management instructor. For this kind of trash, Luo Jia didn't have the leisure time to be polite. Moreover, do they have the qualifications for Luo Jia to be polite? At this moment, Luo Jia's condescending attitude towards the secular world was fully demonstrated. In fact, this is an inevitable mental journey, and Luo Jia himself did not think there was anything wrong. On the other side, the Fishman Island had such a big commotion, which naturally completely alarmed the entire Fishman Island. Even though Luo Jia's conquerors was just released and retracted, it did not affect the entire Fishman Island. But the aftermath generated in an instant still caused the entire Fishman Island to shake violently. The mermaids and fishmen in the distance were all frightened by this earthquake and sweated coldly, and a panic surged in their hearts. What's wrong? What happened? What was that just now? It felt so scary. The fishmen and mermaids were still in shock, and their faces were full of doubts. And on a certain street, a blue fat fishman suddenly showed astonishment. Conqueror's hockey. This breath, could it be? The blue fat man was actually the sea knight Jinbei. That man actually came to the Fishman Island. Jinbei was horrified and rushed towards Conqueror's source without hesitation. At the same time, Ryugu Castle. Neptune was handling government affairs when the palace suddenly shook violently and he almost fell off his chair. Conqueror's hockey. Is there any big shot coming to the Fishman Island? Neptune did not dare to neglect it at all. He quickly got up and walked out of the office and rushed out of Ryugu Castle. Next stop, let's go to Ryugu Castle to have a look. Luo Jia's eyes passed through layers of space and fell on the top of Ryugu Castle. But just as Luo Jia was about to leave, there was a blue fat man in the distance, rushing towards this side. Oh, Jinbei. Although Jinbei tried to stop Luo Jia before and wanted to destroy his warship, Luo Jia did not care about it. Sir Luo Jia, please stay. Soon, Jinbei came to Luo Jia. Although he didn't know why Luo Jia came to the Fishman Island, since the other party came, he could only bite the bullet and deal with it. Of course, he absolutely did not dare to annoy Luo Jia, otherwise the entire Fishman Island might perish. Moreover, Jinbei was still somewhat indignant towards Luo Jia. After all, Biadong died at the hands of this man. But that was a matter of position, so Jinbei was only angry but not hateful. And in Jinbei's view, Whitebeard's ending in this way was undoubtedly the best result. At least it was 10,000 times better than slowly dying of old age and illness. In addition, being able to die at the hands of a strong man like Luo Jia, Dad could be said to have died without regrets. Sir Luo Jia, I'm really sorry for what happened last time. Jinbei apologized to Luo Jia as soon as he arrived, and his attitude was very sincere. Luo Jia waved his hand, indicating that he didn't care at all. After all, the two just had different positions. In fact, he had a good impression of Jinbei, who was righteous, courageous, and quite chivalrous. Let's forget about the last matter. Luo Jia glanced at Jinbei lightly. Thank you, sir, for your generosity. Hearing this, Jinbei finally felt relieved. After being completely relieved, Jinbei suddenly felt that Luo Jia was not so vicious. Excuse me, are you here to perform military duties when you suddenly visit the Fishman Island? Jinbei asked. No, I just came here to have fun and see if the legendary Fishman Island is as beautiful as the rumors say. Luo Jia grinned at Jinbei. Ah, I see. Jinbei secretly wiped his sweat. He didn't expect Luo Jia to come here just for fun. But, I can be his tour guide. Jinbei wanted to say this, but Luo Jia took the lead in making a request. I want to visit the Dragon Palace City. I wonder if you can take me in. Up pointing arrow. Hearing this, Jinbei was entangled. Originally, he wanted to be a tour guide for Luo Jia, and by the way, he could try to avoid conflicts. He was mainly afraid that if someone with no eyesight offended Luo Jia, something bad would happen. The conqueror's hockey just now, and the people who fell to the ground now. These are warning Jinbei all the time that Luo Jia must not be allowed to act alone again. But the other party asked to go to Longdong City, and he really couldn't make the decision. Just when Jinbei was struggling, a powerful voice suddenly came from above. It is a great honor for the Fishman Island that Mr. Luogia can come to the Fishman Island. I have prepared a banquet in Longdong City. Please be sure to attend. At this time, a huge mermaid with bubbles on his body slowly floated from midair and spoke respectfully to Luogia. He was Neptune, the king of Longdong City. In fact, when Neptune found out the latest information about Luogia, he almost scared him to death. Perhaps ordinary fishmen and mermaids do not know what is happening in the sea, nor do they know who Luogia is. But as high-level officials in Ryugu City, they are of course very clear about the outside world, especially the name Luogia is well known. Let's put it this way, in today's sea, the name Luogia represents invincibility. This is a man who makes the whole world tremble. In addition to Luogia's own invincible power, he is also an admiral of headquarters. Behind him stand the two major backers of marine and world government. It can be said that Luogia is the most untouchable person in the world. Such a big man suddenly came to the Fishman Island, which naturally scared Neptune. After all, if the other party stamped his feet, the Fishman Island might be in a catastrophe. So Neptune made a prompt decision and began to prepare a banquet in Ryugu City. At the same time, he personally went to greet Luogia and offered the highest etiquette. As for handling government affairs, go to hell. If you don't appease Luogia first, then the Fishman Island will be gone, and you will have to deal with Jill government affairs. Very reasonable. Seeing Neptune coming in person, Luogia was not surprised at all. If he released Conqueror's Haki, and Neptune didn't come in person, then he was too arrogant. Let alone the king of the Fishman Island, with Luogia's current status and strength, even if he went to the world government, the 5 elders would have to go out to greet him in person. Your Majesty, why are you here? Jinbei immediately stepped forward and saluted respectfully to Neptune. Jinbei, I'm here to take His Excellency Luogia to the banquet. Neptune responded to Jinbei. Since the king is so hospitable, I'd rather obey your order. Faced with Neptune's invitation, Luogia smiled and agreed. Led by Neptune, Luogia came to Ryugu City unimpeded. The scenery of Ryugu City is indeed more beautiful than the Fishman Island below. After arriving at the Dragon Palace City, the 3 princes of the Fishman Island also came out to welcome the guests, including all the senior officials of the Dragon Palace City. Is he Luogia? He is known as the strongest human in the world. But he looks handsome, and there is nothing special about him. Is handsomeness not special enough? Many people have only heard of Luogia's name, but have never seen him in person. So when they saw Luogia's appearance, they talked about it one by one, and seemed to be a little unconvinced. Under the gaze of a group of people, Neptune respectfully led Luogia all the way to the banquet hall of the Dragon Palace City. Before the banquet, Neptune acted as a tour guide and introduced the scenery along the way to Luogia very attentively. This noble treatment is probably only Luogia can enjoy. Such an underwater wonderland is really beautiful. Luogia showed appreciation on his face. Such a beautiful scenery, at least in the previous life of the earth, is absolutely not seen. At this moment, an axe suddenly flew from a distance and chopped a high tower. Seeing this scene, Luogia raised his eyebrows. It's here again. Not only Luogia noticed the axe, Neptune and Jinbei also noticed it. That Vanderdecken. Especially Jinbei, who was even more angry. Neptune also showed a trace of anger on his face. Whenever he saw this scene, Neptune wanted to tear Vanderdecken to pieces. It seems, there are still people performing acrobatics in Dragon Palace City. Luogia said expressionlessly. Alas, I'm so sorry to have disturbed your pleasure. Neptune was sweating profusely and hurried forward to apologize. Tell me, what's going on? Luogia's tone was very calm, but it revealed an unquestionable majesty. In fact, Luogia knew everything, but he still wanted to get specific information from Neptune. Neptune sighed deeply, and then took Luogia and explained. After a while, Neptune explained the whole story to Luogia clearly. At the same time, several people came to the scarred hard-shell tower. At this time, the palace gate was already embedded with various weapons. That fool actually forced the princess into this state. Don't let me find him, otherwise. Jinbei's anger could no longer be suppressed. Thinking of the lovely Princess Shirahoshi shivering in the hard-shell tower, Jinbei wanted to twist off Vanderdecken's head. However, in Neptune's explanation, he deliberately concealed Shirahoshi's true identity and only told everyone that Shirahoshi was threatened. But in Jinbei's opinion, this was enough to sentence Vanderdecken to death. Hehe. King, you have concealed an important piece of information. The real reason why Vanderdecken did this was to get the ancient Lian Sea Lord. Quote. Luo Jia smiled jokingly. This sentence instantly made the whole audience quiet. Point 1 plus 4. Neptune widened his eyes and looked at Luo Jia in disbelief. How did Luo Jia know? Could it be that he came to the Fishman Island this time just for Poseidon? Ancient weapon Poseidon. Could it be that the princess? Jinbei was also confused and asked in disbelief. You guessed right, Princess Shirahoshi is indeed the ancient weapon Poseidon. Luo Jia stated the facts lightly. Hearing this, Jinbei was stunned for a moment. He knew very well in his heart what the ancient weapon represented, that is the power to destroy the world. Legend has it that these three ancient weapons have the power to destroy the world. Getting any one of them is enough to threaten the rule of the world government. How do you know this secret? Neptune's face was pale and his voice was trembling. Even Luo Jia knows, so doesn't that mean Marine and the world government know? Thinking of this, Neptune felt as if he was falling into an ice cellar. The meaning of this information was so terrifying that he didn't dare to think about it anymore. And if Luo Jia came this time to take Shirahoshi away, for good money, he would have no power to resist. For a moment, Neptune was helpless. Even a small fish like Vanderdecken knows the secret, do you still want to hide it from Marine? Luo Jia looked at Neptune with a playful look on his face. Sure enough, Marine also knows it. Neptune felt dizzy and surrounded by endless fear. Ha ha ha, I was lying to you, look how scared you are. Although I know this secret, first didn't tell Marine, so don't worry. Quote, Luo Jia didn't scare Neptune anymore. If he was really scared to death, it would be a big deal. After hearing this, Neptune was still in shock, but at least he came to his senses. It's better for Luo Jia to know it alone than for the whole Marine to know it. At least the matter is irreversible. Mr. Luo Jia, how do you plan to deal with it? Neptune asked cautiously. Chapter 91. Handle, I think you misunderstood something. I am not interested in ancient weapons. Do you think that a mere ancient weapon, do I need it? Luo Jia shook his head and laughed. After hearing this, Jinbei couldn't help but take a deep breath and calmed down a little. Yes, I'm afraid the power of this monster has far surpassed ancient weapons. Luo Jia, who can kill his father with one punch and destroy the world by himself, seems to have little effect on a mere ancient weapon. Sir Luo Jia, I'm very sorry. Hearing this, Neptune finally breathed a sigh of relief and immediately apologized to Luo Jia. As for Luo Jia's eyes, he had already looked at the hard-shell tower and didn't care about Neptune's apology at all. At this time, a weak and soft voice came from the hard-shell tower. Is it the father? Shirahoshi in the hard-shell tower seemed to sense Neptune's arrival, but she didn't dare to open the door, and just asked weakly. It's the father, Shirahoshi. Quote, Neptune responded immediately, and then opened the door of the hard-shell tower. Since Luo Jia already knew the secret, there was no point in hiding it. As for resisting Luo Jia, Neptune didn't dare to have such an idea at all. Luo Jia was revered as the invincible Marine by the world, and this was not for nothing. This invincibility was created by stepping on Red Hair, Kaido, Bigmom, Whitebeard, Golden Lion, these stepping stones. Such a super fierce man, even if Neptune was given 100 courage, he would not dare to offend the other party. For Luo Jia, it would not even take a second to destroy the Fishman Island. If Luo Jia punched it, let alone the Fishman Island, I'm afraid even the Red King continent would be sunk by him. After the door of the hard-shell tower was pushed open, a huge pink boudoir came into view. Although the room was huge, it did not affect its lovely atmosphere at all. At this time, Shirahoshi looked at everyone timidly, and I felt pity for him. Father, Boss Jinbei. Seeing Neptune and Jinbei, Rixing smiled immediately. Hey, who is he? Then, Shirahoshi secretly glanced at Luo Jia again, and a blush appeared on her pretty face. He is the most distinguished guest of the Fishman Island, Mr. Luogia. Quote. Neptune introduced Luogia, his tone was solemn. Yeti. Shirahoshi looked at Luogia timidly. Even with Neptune present, Shirahoshi still looked timid and fearful. So cute. Seeing Shirahoshi in person, Luogia couldn't help but be touched by his cuteness. Although, Luogia had known Shirahoshi's appearance for a long time. But seeing Shirahoshi in person, he still felt that she was cuter than in the animation. Luogia didn't use beautiful to describe Shirahoshi, and he didn't have any desire in his heart. Because Luogia felt that Shirahoshi was too cute, he couldn't treat her as a woman. More like a cute loli, but this loli was a little big. Your Highness, the princess doesn't seem to have any major problems, so the boss can be a little relieved. Seeing Shirahoshi's safe appearance, Jinbei couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After a while, Shirahoshi and Luogia have become familiar with each other. Luogia didn't look tense, and always had a warm smile on her face. So Shirahoshi soon lost her fear and became very involved in Luogia's teaching. Shirahoshi was like a curious baby, asking all kinds of questions tirelessly. Luogia always had a smile on her face and answered her questions patiently. Seeing this, although Neptune was still a little nervous, he finally felt relieved. Meanwhile, in a trench somewhere on the Fishman Island, an ancient ship is floating inside, looking like a ghost ship. On the deck of the ship, a fish man with 4 legs and 2 arms is writing the next love letter. He. I don't know if Shirahoshi has received my love letter now. Vanderdecken smiled strangely. Hey, did Shirahoshi reply? Captain, I didn't receive it. Seeing Vanderdecken's crazy look, his subordinates were obviously a little afraid. Nani, you didn't reply, I guess you didn't receive my love letter. In that case, I'll send it again. Vanderdecken grinned, tied the love letter to an axe, and threw it out with force. He didn't even look at the direction, and threw it backwards. Captain, you threw it in the wrong direction. He. I will never throw it in the wrong direction, you idiots. Vanderdecken laughed wildly at the sky, and his laughter was full of evil. Ryugu Castle, Hard Shell Tower. Shirahoshi was chatting with Luogia very well. At this time, she completely let down her guard and completely regarded Luogia as a true friend. Neptune couldn't be happy because his baby daughter ignored him. Lord Luogia is really amazing, he knows everything. Shirahoshi lay down, and put that cute face in front of Luogia, how cute it could be. You little girl. Quote. Luogia tapped Shirahoshi's nose, and he was also amused by Shirahoshi. He found that although Shirahoshi was timid, he was kind-hearted, cheerful, and had a talent for being a comedian. Luogia chatted with Shirahoshi for a long time, and she kept making all kinds of jokes to tease Luogia. Even though she was big, it did not affect her ability to make jokes at all. Getting along with such a cute, funny, kind, and caring little cutie, Luogia also enjoyed and relaxed a lot. Just when the two were full of laughter, an axe suddenly flew from a distance and chopped directly at Shirahoshi. Luogia and Jinbei looked at the same time. That fool. Before Luogia could make a move, Jinbei came to the air with an angry face, and instantly broke the axe with a 5,000-tile punch. Oh, seeing this scene, Shirahoshi's face was white, and Tianshin's emotions instantly became a fear. Cut the situation of Shirahoshi, thinking that she haven't had any big problems. The deeper Danki was really disgusting to him. Luogia smiled at Shirahoshi. Really, but I'm afraid. Shirahoshi huddled in the quilt weakly, looking pitiful. Obviously, she was also frightened by the weapons that often flew over. Don't worry, no one can hurt you with me here. Luogia comforted her, and then looked at Neptune. King Neptune should have no objection. Opinion. Neptune's heart jumped, how dare he have an objection? Anyway, he couldn't stop it, so he could only sigh in his heart and agreed to Luogia's request. Then, Shirahoshi will leave it to Luogia, sir. Seeing that Neptune also agreed, Shirahoshi's beautiful eyes lit up, and she was a little expectant. However, she still looked pitiful. Don't worry, princess, since you have Lord Luogia to protect you, then you are the safest person in the world. Jinbei persuaded Shirahoshi carefully. Luogia's promises have never been impossible. Even if he had signed the military order at the naval headquarters, he finally completed it. Defeated 4 emperors by himself, climbed to the top of the sea, and became the invincible marine praised by the world. Seeing his father and Jinbei's guarantee, Shirahoshi's fear gradually subsided, replaced by expectation. Are you going now? I'm really looking forward to it. Shirahoshi has never released a hard-shell tower. Hearing his daughter's words, Neptune immediately broke down and almost burst into tears. I'll order someone to prepare bubble coating right away, Neptune said while holding back tears. However, Luo Jia shook his head. Don't bother so much, just raise your head and you can see it. Luo Jia's words made Neptune look puzzled. And Shirahoshi also looked at Luo Jia in a daze, not understanding what he meant by this sentence. Does he want to? Jinbei's eyes widened, and he instantly thought of some terrifying possibility, and his heart trembled. Sure enough, it was as Jinbei expected. The next moment, Luo Jia disappeared instantly and came to the top of Ryugu Castle. Then, he passed through the first layer of bubbles and came to the edge of the sky above the Fisherman Island. What does Lord Luo Jia want to do? Shirahoshi looked up, his cute face full of question marks. Only Jinbei seemed to have thought of what Luo Jia was going to do, and his face twitched violently. Deal with that Vanderdecken X, and by the way, let you see the real blue sky and white clouds. Luo Jia smiled at Shirahoshi, then he passed through the outer bubble and shit outside the Fishman Island. Luo Jia raised his arm, slowly clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and then punched forward. A serious punch. A shock wave instantly penetrated the seabed. Neptune and Shirahoshi were stunned, seeing the most incredible scene in their lives. A punch was thrown, and the sea was penetrated. There was no earth-shattering roar, nor was there an explosion that would cause the earth to collapse. Everything was silent, because the sound had been annihilated. The ocean above the Fishman Island just split to both sides. In an instant, a blue sky, soft white clouds, and a golden sun appeared above everyone's head like a scroll. This scene was like heaven. Shirahoshi's beautiful eyes sparkled, and the whole person was completely intoxicated by this scroll. As for Jinbei and Neptune, they were also amazed by this scene. This beautiful scroll gave people the feeling that it was a work of art painted by God. Flawless and magnificent. At the same time, on the deck of an ancient pirate ship, deep in the trench dozens of miles above the Fishman Island, Vanderdecken was still writing a love letter, with a sinister grin from time to time. Bye. You belong to me. Poseidon also belongs to me. Vanderdecken looked up at the sky and laughed wildly, as if he had foreseen the scene of himself controlling Poseidon and standing at the top of the sea. But at this moment, an indescribable great force passed under the trench. What is this? At this moment, Vanderdecken and his subordinates were in a frozen state. In this frozen state, their consciousness captured the last scene of their lives. The sea was like a curtain, slowly torn apart by some great power. Then a beam of sunlight fell from the top of his head, and the blue sky was hung with white clouds. This is an eternal and perfect picture. Is this heaven? Vanderdecken and his subordinates all had this thought in their minds, and then they fell into endless darkness. The next moment, the entire trench turned into nothingness, and the entire pirate ship turned into dust. As for the frozen ones, they also drifted in the sea like dust. No trace of bloodline was left, and no bones were left. All their traces were like words on a blackboard, and then they were wiped by the blackboard eraser and disappeared into thin air. But in the last moment before death, Vanderdecken and the others thought they had embraced heaven. So their death is enviable. The Fishman Island. At this time, the mermaids were playing on the beach, and the fishmen were doing their own things. But in the next moment, everyone was stunned. Is this a dream? A mermaid looked up at the sky with a dull expression on her face. Not only her, but everyone had a dull expression on their faces. Is this a miracle? Luo Jia's serious punch not only blasted open the sea above the Fishman Island, but also punched a big hole in the red line. Whether in Sabaody archipelago or naval headquarters, you can almost see the big hole. Especially the Holy Land Mariajoy, which was almost blown up. Sabaody archipelago. A white-haired old man who was coding had stopped his work and was petrified. What kind of power is this? Seeing this scene, even he, who was once the right arm of the Pirate King, was shocked and could not calm down for a long time. I wanted to meet him, but it seems that my old bones can't stand the other party's torment. Rayleigh shook his head and smiled bitterly, and continued to coat the ship. Naval Headquarters, Marineford, Sengoku and Garp, as well as the Admiral of the Three Elements, looked at the red line that was pierced in the sea that was divided into two from a distance, and collectively showed disbelief. Even if we go to the Fishman Island, Luogia still won't stop. Sengoku couldn't help but cover his forehead, feeling a sense of powerlessness in his heart. Ha ha ha, it's really hilarious. Luogia is showing off this time, and the rumor has it that he has beaten Zindi to death. Garp was shocked when he saw this scene, and laughed more. It's unknown whether Luogia's punch was intentional or unintentional. It just happened to penetrate the red line, and what's more coincidental is that the Holy Land Mariajoy is also in that direction. This time, the Holy Land Mariajoy is probably in danger. Garp, shut up. Sengoku glared at Garp fiercely. When Garp was young, although his strength was not as pervert as Luogia, his degree of chaos was even worse than Luogia. But at this moment, Sengoku suddenly realized that compared with Luogia, Garp's chaos was just child's play. At least Garp would never penetrate the red line, let alone the Holy Land Mariajoy. Ryugu Castle, Hard Shell Tower. Shirahoshi, Neptune, and Jinbei all stared at the sky blankly, their minds were blank. Quote. Neptune knew that Luogia was very strong, and he had heard a lot of rumors about Luogia. But rumors were just rumors after all. When he saw this scene with his own eyes, he found that rumors were not enough to express 1/10,000th of Luogia's strength. As for Shirahoshi, she was also immersed in shock. But she was not shocked by Luogia's strength, but by the beautiful painting hanging above her head. It's true. Jinbei swallowed his saliva, shocked in his heart, but at the same time unable to complain. Every time the opponent made a move, it seemed to be always so exaggerated, breaking the imagination of human beings. Mr. Luogia, the Holy Land Mariajoy is above the Fishman Island. Will it destroy the Holy Land if you do it? After hearing Jinbei's words, Luogia slowly retracted his fist. At this time, Luogia replied casually, "Don't worry, I know my limits." Quote. God knows his limits. Jinbei's face twitched, and he was speechless. Although he didn't care about the life or death of the Holy Land, if the Holy Land was really destroyed like this, he didn't know how to describe his feelings. Is this the sky, the sun, and the white clouds? It's so beautiful. Quote. Shirahoshi was immersed in the beautiful painting, with a dazed expression. And looking at Shirahoshi like this, Jinbei couldn't help but feel pity. Because he thought of Shirahoshi trapped in the hard shell tower. In addition to being frightened every day, everything in the outside world was so far away from her. Every time he thought of this, Jinbei felt very uncomfortable. He felt guilty towards Princess Otahime. This is really a miracle. Neptune gradually woke up and couldn't help but sigh. After a few minutes, the split sea finally stopped, and the water flow began to slowly close again. As the sea closed, the handsome and beautiful painting was blocked again. Shirahoshi finally came back to his senses, with a reluctant look on his pretty face. At the same time, Holy Land Mariajoy, Pengu City. The five elders stood at the highest point of Pengu City, looking down at the Holy Land Mariajoy. They watched a deep hole appear on the edge of the Holy Land, and watched the separated sea slowly close up, and finally set off a huge wave. Seeing this, the five elders also had a huge wave in their hearts. Even from a long distance, the five elders could clearly see the separated sea. It was not because their eyesight was good, but because the separated sea area was too large. Luogia, that fool, really didn't take our world government seriously. If that move just now was a little more deviated, I guess we would all be gone. And, just now the CPO reported the situation of the celestial dragons. 10 celestial dragons accidentally fell into the abyss hole. Most of them are gone. Quote. How can we explain this to celestial dragons? How can we explain this to Lord Yimu? Five elders showed anger and helplessness on their faces, and at the same time, they became more and more wary of Luogia. Since that guy awakened Conqueror's Hockey, he has been getting more and more out of our control, but this time, that fool is really too much. Five elders with curly hair frowned, and his tone was very gloomy. But on the surface, all this is just an accident. He didn't deliberately target the Holy Land. Should we convict him? Five elders holding swords shook their heads, looking helpless. No. At least not at this stage. Five elders with long beards spoke in a deep voice. But how can we explain this to celestial dragons? Let's just say it was a natural disaster, and remove Luojia's suspicion first. Yes, this is the best way to prevent celestial dragons from provoking Luojia. It is not appropriate to make enemies with him now. Then we can only act according to the previous plan. We try our best to stabilize Luojia. When we find his weakness, the initiative will be in our hands at that time. Yes, I second it. I second it. The five elders reached a consensus. Under the pressure of the situation, the five elders made a decision that went against their ancestors. That is to help Luojia cover up. Because at this stage, they really can't afford to provoke each other. 2 days later, in the dark sea, a person was swimming quickly to the surface of the sea. This person was Luojia. After staying in the Fishman Island for 2 days, accompanied by Shirahoshi, Luojia admired the scenery of the Fishman Island and said goodbye to the Fishman Island. The Fishman Island is very beautiful, but it is not enough to make Luojia linger. Moreover, beautiful things are more beautiful when they are left in memory and used for remembrance. Point 0. However, before leaving, Luojia also deliberately hinted to Jinbei about Hody Jones's conspiracy, which prevented future troubles. As for why he didn't take action, is Hody Jones worthy? After finishing everything, Luojia took another look at the boat of oath. In fact, he could carry it away, but it was too easy to do so, so Luojia gave up. 10,000 meters below the sea, 5,000,000 meters. As he continued to swim upstream, Luojia soon came to the sea surface. At this time, the seawater was no longer dark, and the dark environment quickly brightened, turning from black to azure blue. At this time, Luojia could finally see the sea surface at the top. Splash! Luojia rushed out of the sea, breathed fresh air again, and felt the warm sunshine. I came here right after coming up, what a coincidence. Luojia saw 79 huge mangroves at a glance. And in that area, countless bubbles were floating, like a dream paradise. If the Fishman Island is an underwater wonderland, then this is a paradise on Earth, and it is also an extremely beautiful place. And this is Sabaody Archipelago, the transfer station leading to the New World in the first half of the Grand Line. This is also the last island in the first half of the Grand Line. Any pirate who wants to enter the New World must pass through here. This is an extremely beautiful, but extremely dangerous place. Because the naval headquarters is not far away from here, and there are celestial dragons on the island. Once you contradict the celestial dragons, the end will be extremely miserable. It just so happens that we can go to the island for a walk. Then Luojia stepped on the moonwalk and flew to Sabaody Archipelago. Just near the shore of Sabaody Archipelago, a pirate ship suddenly came nearby. Little guys, next we will enter the New World, let's go to the island for a while. The captain was standing on the deck, holding a long sword in his hand, and he raised his arm and called. Long live the boss! All the pirates followed the captain's shout and raised their arms, and the scene was full of excitement. At this time, a sharp-eyed pirate suddenly found a figure flying towards them in the distance. Boss, there's someone in the sky. The pirate shouted in shock on the spot. With this exclamation, all the pirates looked up. But as soon as they looked up, they felt their eyes were blurred, and Luojia had already landed on the ship. Marine. The pirates' expressions changed instantly when they saw Luojia's marine uniform. They were pirates, and the marine who came to their ship was definitely not here to call Kongani chicken baby. Although the other party did not look like an ordinary marine. But they were arrogant and felt that they were not ordinary pirates. This was the time when they were the bravest. Let alone a mere marine, I am afraid that if a marine admiral came, they would also scatter the other party's ashes. Marine must have seen our terrible potential, so he wanted to kill us, the emperors who have not yet grown up, in advance. What a vicious plot. Little ones, kill him, and we will be the New World emperors in the future. The captain's eyes flashed with determination, and he gave an order directly. Emperor, emperor. Hearing the word emperor, the pirates immediately became excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They picked up their own weapons, 30 swords, handguns, fire, and rushed towards Luogia. In an instant, countless bullets poured out like a rainstorm. Their captain is not called Liang Jingru, so ordinary yet so confident. Luogia was speechless, and simply let them shoot wildly. His whole body suddenly exploded with crackling sounds. The pirates were still firing wildly, and they finally stopped when all the bullets were fired. When the smoke dissipated, they suddenly widened their eyes. Luogia waved his hand to drive away the smoke and patted the dust on his body, and nothing happened. This scene made all the pirates dumbfounded. The bullet didn't hit him. Is it the ability of the devil fruit? Countless pirates looked at this scene with shock on their faces. But in the next moment, the shock on the faces of these pirates turned into dead silence. Because Luogia on the opposite side glared, their brains were like exploding, and they were instantly blank, and collectively brain dead. In just a blink of an eye, hundreds of pirates, including big pirates with bounties of over 100 million, were brain dead. And Luogia never moved a finger from beginning to end. He's still the future emperor. He's not afraid of making others laugh. Quote. Luogia spat a mouthful of water on the boat. This group of self-satisfied pirates really shocked Luogia. And the water in New World is so deep that these pirates can't control it at all. With this level, even if they are not destroyed by Luogia today, they will be destroyed by others sooner or later. Luogia shook his head, and then officially stepped into the Sabaody archipelago. Area 29, Civilian Street. Luogia just changed into a new set of clothes at Shopping Street 30, and then went to Area 29. When passing through an alley on the Civilian Street, Luogia actually met an unexpected blind man. And this blind man seemed to be lost, and asked Luogia, who had just arrived here, for directions, and asked about the location of the casino. Asking a Marine about the casino, this blind man is also amazing. But there is something even more amazing behind. Luogia was new here and didn't know the way at all. So he just pointed randomly, but this blind man actually believed it. The blind man actually believed it. Luogia was speechless. One dared to speak, the other dared to believe. That guy, wouldn't he really be fooled by me? Luogia's conscience was immediately condemned. It seemed not very kind to fool a blind man like this. With such a complicated feeling, Luogia secretly followed the blind man. But what Luogia never expected was that the other party actually found a casino. This kind of luck is outrageous. Looking at this casino called Vegas, Luogia immediately followed in. At this time, the blind man in a purple coat was sitting in front of a roulette table. There were already a lot of chips in front of him, and it seemed that he had won a lot. And next to this blind uncle, there was a large group of people waiting for the blind uncle to bet. I'll bet directly, number 4. The blind uncle was very decisive and took out a stack of chips and placed them in the middle of number 4. And he was Fujitora Admiral in the original book, Yishao. But he is not called Fujitora now because Fujitora is the code name after becoming an admiral. His real name is Yishao. No one could have thought that this blind uncle who was gambling would have the terrifying combat power of the admiral level. I'll bet on number 4 too. And me. Seeing Fujitora bet, a large group of people around him rushed forward and directly bet on number 4 to the limit of positive. The dealer in charge of spinning the roulette wheel was sweating profusely as he watched this scene. He gritted his teeth and turned the roulette wheel. A moment later, the ball really stopped on number 4. It's number 4. Haha, 35 times the odds. Long live. A large group of gamblers cheered immediately, and the sound almost resounded throughout the casino, causing countless people to cast strange glances. At this time, the dealer in charge of spinning the roulette wheel was paralyzed on the ground. Very powerful prediction. At some point, a young man appeared out of thin air next to the table. It was Luogia, who had changed his clothes. Luogia's inexplicable appearance did attract a few strange looks. However, these looks were quickly retracted. Because Luogia's appearance and temperament were too outstanding, he was most likely a senior executive or heir of a major force. They don't need to provoke such a big shot, it's better to pay more attention to Fujitora. After all, this blind man can make them a lot of money. APJUD. Fujitora smiled kindly. Although he was a blind man, he still noticed Luojia's arrival at the first time. It's just some small tricks, I'm afraid it's far worse than yours, but I'm also honored to receive your praise. Quote. Fujitora nodded to Luojia. I'm just telling the truth. Quote. Luojia smiled slightly, not hiding his admiration for Fujitora. Hearing this, Hu smiled gently again. Then he continued to look at the roulette wheel, and seemed to be thinking about how to bet next. But at this moment, countless thugs in suits suddenly emerged from the casino. They looked like the thugs of this casino. They were holding swords, sticks and clubs, with ferocious and arrogant expressions, and some even took muskets and fired a few shots into the sky. All the idlers, get out. The man who just fired the empty gun walked out, and he seemed to be the leader of this group of thugs in suits. A group of gamblers looked at each other, even if they were unhappy, but under the threat of such a scene, they were also scared, and then each put away their chips and left. After all, compared to money, of course, life is more important. What's more, they have already made a lot of money, and people can't be too greedy. After a while, only Fujitora and Luojia were left at this gambling table. Seeing that Luojia was not going to leave, a thug in a suit was ready to drive him away. But the leader of the thugs frowned, stopped him immediately, and shook his head. There was no way. Luojia's appearance and temperament were too outstanding, and he was obviously not an ordinary person. As casino thugs, they still had some eyesight. It was better not to offend such a person whose background was unknown. Anyway, they were not dealing with Luojia, but the blind Fujitora. Hey, blind man, do you dare to fight with me? The thug leader stepped on the table with one foot and looked at Fujitora with a gloomy face. Fujitora was about to pack up his chips and seemed to be ready to stand up and leave. But when he heard the other party say this, he couldn't help but pause. At this time, around Fujitora, countless thugs in suits were holding swords, sticks and clubs, and they were murderous. Since you sincerely invite me, I will accompany you. Fujitora smiled honestly and sat back in his seat. HMPH, you're smart. Seeing Fujitora being so smart, the leader of the gangsters couldn't help but snort coldly. He had already inquired before. Although the blind man's origin was unknown, he seemed to have no background and was just an ordinary Ronin. The leader of the gangsters would not hesitate to deal with such an ordinary person. Let's decide the winner in one round. The chips I have here are about the same as yours. Whoever wins can take all. The leader of the gangsters walked to the roulette wheel and didn't give Fujitora a chance to refuse. Well, God still directly bets on number 4. Fujitora smiled. Hee. Then I will directly bet on number 0. The leader of the gangsters smiled sinisterly and turned the roulette wheel. The ball quickly stopped, and it was number 4 again. Seeing this scene, the leader of the gangsters was shocked, but he distorted the facts. Number 0, I won. That's a pity. It seems that my good luck has ended. Quote. Fujitora shook his head, looking somewhat disappointed. He was not disappointed that he lost money, but that there were too many unbearable filth in this world. Isn't this bullying the honest people? Luojia also shook his head, feeling that the casino's behavior was not fair. However, Luojia also discovered Fujitora's pervert. Because he was sure that Fujitora did not use his ability to interfere with the roulette wheel. But the other party still bet accurately every time. This shows that Fujitora's observation color may have reached the level of predicting the future. And Luojia was sure that Fujitora probably recognized his identity completely the moment he appeared. While recognizing his identity, Fujitora remained calm, and this mentality made Luojia value him even more. He decided to recruit Fujitora to Marine. I think you are very lucky. Luojia spoke at this time. Oh, your words are very meaningful. Fujitora was stunned for a moment, then smiled honestly. Of course, this time the roulette wheel turned to number 4 again. Do you think you are lucky? Luojia said with a hint of teasing. Hearing Luojia expose him, the thug leader finally couldn't help it and immediately shouted at Fujitora. Hey, blind man, you have already lost, leave your chips and get out. And you, don't talk nonsense here, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. The thug leader had a ferocious look on his face. However, Luojia and Fujitora ignored him. At this moment, the two of them only had each other in their eyes. How about a bet with me? Luogia suddenly made an invitation. What do you want to bet on? Fujitora was a little surprised. How about poker? Luogia's eyes flashed. No problem, but what is your bet? Fujitora smiled. If you win, I will agree to any conditions you have. The key point is, any conditions. And if I win, I want to invite you to be a marine. Luogia grinned and spoke very straightforwardly. Luogia was not afraid that Fujitora would not agree, because in the original book, since Fujitora could become a marine admiral, it proved that he was not against marine. These two guys. The thug leader looked at Luogia and Fujitora and felt palpitations inexplicably in his heart. He always felt that these two people were sea kings in human skin, hiding terrible things in their bodies. Impossible. Quote. The thug leader shook his head and shook off the fear in his heart. Being ignored by the two, the fear in his heart disappeared, and was replaced by anger. Even if Luogia's identity is not simple, so what, he has the final say here. Kill them. The thug leader gave the order. Hearing this, the thugs in suits rushed up immediately, ready to kill the two with swords. However, the moment they approached, a terrifying pressure fell on everyone out of thin air, instantly suppressing them and making them unable to move. Crack, crack. Countless thugs in suits made a series of bone-breaking sounds in their bodies, and they wanted to scream loudly but couldn't. The thugs were almost collapsed by the gravity, and they knelt on the ground, with horror on their faces. The thug leader trembled all over, looking at Luogia and Fujitora, as if he had seen the most terrible demon. Backquote. If this goes on, the casino will be gone, you can't be doing it on purpose, so as not to fulfill our bet. Quote. Luogia smiled, then glanced at all the thugs in suits. Boom. Just with such a simple look, the thug leader and his men's brains exploded. Then they all fell to the ground, completely losing consciousness. Before the thug leader died, his heart was full of disbelief. Before he became a thug in this casino, he was a pirate with a bounty of 160 million. But he, with a bounty of 1 Shuang Bailey, was killed in a second by a look. The thug leader died with his eyes open. Your way of doing things really makes me amazed. Quote. Fujitora cancelled the gravity and his face became serious. The leader of the thugs didn't know what was going on, but Qian Zhao Fujitora knew it. Luogia's look contained conqueror's haki. Fujitora knew Luogia's true identity, but he also found it incredible that a marine had conquerors. What's even more incredible is that Luogia's conquerors would be so perverted. Just a glare from a distance, and all the thugs died. If you don't have 2 brushes, how can you be called an invincible marine by the world? Luogia shrugged and simply introduced himself. Fujitora's mouth twitched slightly. He didn't expect Luogia to be so single. It seems that the other party has taken advantage of him. Then please go first, sir. Fujitora restrained his emotions, looked at the poker cards on the table next to him, and then stretched out his hand to signal. Good, that's straightforward. Rocky picked up the poker cards and spread them out on the table. I seldom gamble, so I only know simple ones. Sir, just say it. Fujitora nodded. There are 52 cards on the table, and the ace of spades is the biggest. I will throw all the cards into the air later. Whoever gets the ace of spades first will win. After Luogia introduced the rules, he looked at Fujitora. What do you think? Okay, let's do it your way. Fujitora nodded. Then, let's start. After saying that, Rocky threw all the playing cards into the air. Both Rocky and Fujitora have extremely perverted perception, so they easily locked on the ace of spades. The rules seem simple, but don't forget that they have to grab the cards to win. The next moment, Fujitora instantly pulled out his staff knife. A terrifying gravity suddenly erupted and instantly enveloped Luogia. This gravity is not enough. Luogia smiled deeply, ignored the gravity, and reached out to take the cards. Fujitora's face changed slightly, and the staff knife was completely pulled out, slashing out circles of purple gravity rings, instantly suppressing the whole scene. Buzz. The people on the whole street sank inexplicably, and they were all horrified. Especially those who were close to the casino were directly pressed down by gravity. They were unable to move due to the gravity, and they couldn't even scream. Inside the casino. This is more like it. Feeling the endless gravity falling on him, Peijiya gave Fujitora a little praise. The next second, Luogia's body shook, and he actually broke through the endless gravity 050 and stretched the gravity field. Due to the power confrontation between the two, the poker cards have been stagnant in the air and have never fallen down. These two people, one relying on pure flesh and the other relying on endless gravity, pressed the ground of the entire casino layer by layer. With the two people as the center, the ground gradually sank into a bowl shape. Quote. This shocking scene directly made the people on this civilian street exhale fragrance. Although the power of Luogia and Fujitora was only controlled in the casino. But the aftermath of the overflow was enough to make people nearby complain bitterly. Everyone was horrified when they saw the ground collapse layer by layer within a radius of several thousand meters. In the face of such a natural disaster-like force, they were like a small boat in the waves, which could be submerged by huge waves at any time. Quote. Run. Finally, someone reacted. Under the crisis of life and death, countless people dragged their heavy bodies and fled desperately. In the casino, Luogia tore Fujitora's gravity field apart with both hands. Fujitora's face changed, and his body was forced to retreat dozens of meters on the spot. Even the clogs were worn out of smoke before they stopped. At this time, the ace of spades slowly fell from the air and finally fell into Luogia's hands. I won. Luogia grinned and held the ace of spades in front of Fujitora. Alas, I lost. Please tell me what conditions you have. Fujitora shook his head and slowly put away his staff knife. Yishao, I think you know my true identity. I won't pretend anymore. I'm going to be honest. I admire you very much. I want to invite you to join the Marine Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral and Base Commander. I can only give you this for now, but please believe me, you will definitely have a place in the future Admiral of the Headquarters. Luogia said to Fujitora very sincerely. As long as you can let me realize my ambitions. Fujitora smiled innocently. In fact, he had long thought about joining the Marine, but he was too proud to start from a small position. Luogia invited him personally and promised him a high-level position at once. It would be a lie for him to say that he was not tempted. So, all this came naturally. After successfully recruiting Fujitora, Luogia quickly drafted a job report. However, this kind of job report still needs to be stamped by Sengoku before it can be counted. So in order not to delay Fujitora's entry, Luogia decided not to waste time and went directly to the naval headquarters with Fujitora. Naval headquarters, Marineford, in the marshal's office. Akainu was holding Luogia's job report at this time and slammed it in front of Sengoku, his face full of anger. A blind man with no military merit, no qualifications, and even an unknown identity, is appointed as the Vice Admiral of Naval Headquarters as soon as he arrives. What a joke. I strongly disagree. Akainu's face was extremely gloomy. If the person opposite was not Sengoku, he would have gone crazy on the spot. According to the information provided by Luogia, this Yishao is extraordinary and has justice in his heart. He is a rare marine talent. Sengoku looked serious. Luogia gave such a high evaluation, which shows that this Yishao is really unusual. If that's the case, I don't object to this Yishao being promoted to the Vice Admiral of the Headquarters. But Luogia actually asked him to take the position of the branch base chief part-time. How can this be easily agreed? Promoted to the Vice Admiral of the Headquarters and the part-time position of the branch base chief, the actual power is almost close to him, the Admiral of the Headquarters. With these things, Yishao is already qualified to enter the Supreme Conference and has a certain decision-making power and voice. Well, what you said makes sense. Listening to Akainu's words, Sengoku couldn't help but ponder. Although this Yishao was guaranteed and recommended by Luogia. But Sengoku didn't see it with his own eyes, so he couldn't help but have some concerns in his heart. At this time, Luogia's voice came from outside the door. Akainu, do you have any objections to the person I brought back? If you have any objections, I don't mind letting Yishao prove himself in person. At this time, Luogia had already walked into the office and glanced at Akainu with a slightly playful look. Seeing the other party's contemptuous eyes, Akainu's blood pressure rose and he almost ran away on the spot. Since you are not convinced, you can go to Yishao for a duel. I don't mind. I think Yishao won't mind either. Luo Jia sat on the sofa and raised his legs. Sengoku bowed his head and pondered, although doing so was a bit against the rules. But he really wanted to see how strong Yishao, who was highly praised by Luo Jia, would be. Hearing this, Akainu's face was gloomy, and he walked out of the office without saying a word. Seeing Akainu turning away, Sengoku subconsciously wanted to call him, but was stopped by Luo Jia. Quote, Marshal Sengoku, please stay. It's okay. Let's talk business first. Okay, you wrote in the report before that Yishao would be in charge of the Wanokuni Sea in New World. Speaking of business, Sengoku's face immediately became solemn. Since the BIGMOM pirates were crippled, many pirates have been ready to take the opportunity to seize the throne. The situation in the Wanokuni Sea is not as peaceful as the other 4 emperors' territories. Kaido of the Beast's territory Wanokuni has been secretly taken over and digested by Luo Jia. In addition, with Luo Jia's protection, Wanokuni is the most stable. As for the Whitebeard pirates' territory, as the saying goes, a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Although Whitebeard has fallen, but the captains of the major teams are all strong men who can stand on their own, so they can barely intimidate most pirates. And there is no need to say more about the Red Hair pirates, there is no change at all. Therefore, only the Wanokuni Sea is the most chaotic. Marine had finally crippled the BIGMOM pirates, and of course they didn't want to see another 4 emperors born. So Marine had been suppressing the Wanguo Sea, but due to the lack of high-end combat power, Admiral couldn't just focus on the Wanguo Sea. That led to an increasingly chaotic situation in the Wanguo Sea. Because this incident was also Luo Jia's mistake, so he proposed a plan. His plan was to establish a branch base in the Wanguo Sea and send a strong man to take charge. In this way, the next 4 emperors can be completely cut off. After discussing with Suru and others, Sengoku felt that this plan was indeed feasible. But there is a core problem, that is, a strong man who can calm the situation is needed. And does Yishao, recommended by Luo Jia, really have this strength? At the same time, Fujitora, who was waiting in the reception room, ran into Akainu who came over. And many Marines around, seeing Akainu coming over, saluted Akainu one after another. Although Akainu was defeated by Luo Jia, it did not affect his prestige in the Marines at all. You are just a smile. Are you qualified to bear the name of justice? Akainu walked up to Fujitora and asked directly. In Akainu's eyes, the name of justice is not just about strength. Even Luo Jia, Akainu has never recognized him, even though Luo Jia is stronger than him. Date. Fujitora vaguely guessed the identity of the visitor, but still asked politely. Headmiral, Sakari. Akainu responded directly in a deep voice. I am a smile, please give me more advice. Fujitora's tone was extremely calm. Fujitora can see through human nature and emotions. Just through Akainu's attitude and emotional fluctuations, he can infer a lot of things. But he is not afraid. In fact, he has long been mentally prepared that the 2 major positions he holds will definitely cause dissatisfaction among many people. Fujitora is a proud person, he doesn't want to be looked down upon. Akainu narrowed his eyes, and the anger in his heart weakened. Fujitora gave him a good first impression, calm and reserved, his attitude was at least 100 times better than Luo Jia's. But not everyone can hold such a huge power as the Vice Admiral of the headquarters and the head of the branch base. Therefore, Akainu wanted to test him personally. Since you want me to teach you, then show your true ability. Akainu's face was solemn. Well, since you want to teach me, I will accompany you. Hearing this, the tiger knife was half pulled out. Akainu snorted lightly, and his eyes gradually became grim. Seeing this scene, the Marines watching secretly swallowed their saliva, not knowing whether to stop it. But seeing the 2 people's tense appearance, they probably couldn't stop it. So they decisively made room and retreated. Although they didn't know Fujitora's strength, they were still very clear about Admiral Akainu's strength. If you don't stay away, you will definitely suffer. At the same time, in the marshal's office, Luo Jia and Sengoku were looking down. Now, I guess the headquarters fortress will suffer again. Quote. Luo Jia's tone was somewhat gloating. Luo Jia was not worried about Fujitora's strength. His strength was so strong that he could be ranked in the top 3 of the admiral class. Moreover, the gravity on the magma should have a certain degree of suppression on the latter. You guy, if the person you recommended is really so strong, it would be worth it even if the headquarters fortress is destroyed. Sengoku shook his head. That's true. Luo Jia nodded, quite agreeing. In the square of the headquarters fortress, one purple and one red, two figures are confronting each other. Sir, please. As soon as the words fell, Fujitora burst out with a terrifying aura, and the cane knife in his hand was instantly pulled out. The next moment, circles of purple halos rose into the air and shot directly to the end of the sky. Seeing this, Kai Tian frowned. He had already prepared for defense, but he didn't expect that the other party was not slashing at him. At this time, he couldn't help but look up at the sky. Not only Akainu, but the Marines watching also looked up at the sky with confusion. The sky was blue and clear, without any abnormality. But in the next second, a ray of light appeared on Chen Shou's head. As the light became brighter and brighter, everyone's eyes popped out. This is actually a meteorite. What? Summoning a meteorite. Hey, hey, hey. This is too exaggerated. If this meteorite is allowed to fall, it is estimated that it can destroy half of the headquarters fortress. Meteorite. Akainu's pupils shrank and he was shocked. However, Akainu is an admiral after all. After reacting, he punched the sky. Great eruption. The huge magma fist met the falling meteorite in the sky. The meteorite collided with the giant magma fist, and set off a shocking air wave in the air. Then, Fujitora attacked again. Since Akainu was clearly provoking, Fujitora would naturally not show mercy. Gravity Blade Tiger. A terrifying purple torrent spread from Akainu was crushed by a loud bang. It's gravity. If it was just a simple slash, Akainu would not be afraid at all, he could have transformed into an element in advance. But the gravity knife is different, it is basically an AoE damage, and there is no way to avoid it. There were meteorites falling above, and Dong Wandao was attacking from below. In an instant, Akainu, who underestimated the enemy, was directly crushed into a pool of magma. Boom! The area where Akainu was located was crushed into ruins by gravity, and at the bottom of the ruins was a pool of magma. This scene shocked all the Marines. They looked at Fujitora who was slowly putting away his knife, their eyes full of awe. Although Akainu was suppressed by Fujitora because he underestimated the enemy. But Akainu is an admiral. And he is the peak admiral, a fierce man with enough combat power to compete with the four emperors. But such a fierce man was still suppressed by Fujitora like this. It is conceivable how perverted Fujitora is. It is estimated that even if Akainu tried his best, he might not be able to defeat Fujitora. The magma reconstructed Akainu's body again. He took the blow, and although he offset most of the damage in the end, he still suffered a little injury. After all, Fujitora's combat power is also a real admiral level. Akainu was furious. Although he was only slightly injured, the key point is that he lost face this time. The incident of him being beaten up by Luo Jia before was almost over as time passed. But now, he was injured by Fujitora, the newcomer. The most fatal thing is that the opponent was personally introduced by Luo Jia. Thinking of this, Akainu became more and more furious and prepared to rush up and fight Fujitora again. But at this time, Sengoku's voice came from the sky. Sakazuki, go ahead. Before he finished speaking, Sengoku jumped down from the top floor office and came to the middle of the two. In fact, Sengoku was also very shocked. Although Luo Jia said that Yishao was extraordinary, he never expected that he would be so extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. In addition to being shocked, Sengoku couldn't help but admire Yishao. Marshal Liao is great, it's just a trifling trick. Yishao was very humble, without any domineering edge, and his attitude was always neither humble nor arrogant, showing the style of an admiral. But hearing this, Akainu almost spit out blood again. Trifling trick. What is he who was suppressed by trifling tricks? This wave of connotation almost made Akainu hurt. Akainu knew that Yishao was not deliberately mocking, but he was aggrieved because of this. In fact, sometimes, the harm of this unintentional act can be more hurtful than deliberate mockery. Finally, the battle came to an end. But because Yishao suppressed Akainu, his reputation in Marine jumped to the top in one fell swoop. Even though Akainu had been beaten by Luo Jia once, his strength still stood at the top of Marine. However, Akainu, who was at the top of Marine, was suppressed by Xiao in a head-on confrontation. It can be seen that Yi Xiao's strength is strong enough to be on par with the top admiral. Many people have secretly called him a monster. During this period, Luo Jia also applied for an exclusive code for Yi Xiao, which was of course Fujitora. For exclusive codes, the first thing to look at is not military merit and qualifications. Instead, only those who have reached the admiral level are eligible to apply. The top floor of the naval headquarters fortress is in Luo Jia's admiral office. Because Luo Jia holds two positions, he has offices in the G1 branch base and the headquarters fortress. After being busy in the Wangguo Sea for half a month, Aokiji finally returned to the naval headquarters and prepared to hand over his work to Fujitora. After hearing about Fujitora, Aokiji came to Luo Jia's office. Ah la la la, Luo Jia, you are so lucky. You can attract such a monster just by going out. You are really good. Aokiji envied sincerely. Although Fujitora has two positions, strictly speaking, he is still under Luo Jia's command. And Aokiji is also very clear about Akainu's strength. It is difficult for him to win against Akainu. And Akainu actually lost a move to Fujitora. You can imagine how shocked Aokiji was. Haha, I can only say that I have good luck. Luo Jia smiled and waved his hands with some pride. Alas, I have been working so hard for the past half month. With Fujitora Brothers Relay, I can finally sleep in. Quote. Aokiji looked expectant. Then go to sleep. Anyway, you should not be so busy in the future. I will treat you to dinner in a few days when I have time, and invite Garp, the old man, by the way. Quote. Luo Jia smiled slightly. After Fujitora is sent out to stabilize the situation in Wangguo, and Aokiji is transferred back to take charge of the headquarters, it is estimated that a lot of workload can be reduced. If Green Bull can be found, Kizaru is estimated to be slacking off at work. Because Green Bull, like Fujitora, was recruited from the civilian population and became an admiral, and it is rumored that Midoriya and Fujitora have a good relationship. If Green Bull is found, with him and Fujitora guarding the Wangguo Sea area, the situation of Marine in Wangguo will basically be stable. As for all the sea areas of New World, they are nominally guarded by Luo Jia's G1 branch base. And the most chaotic Wangguo Sea area is suppressed by Fujitora and Green Bull together. The three admirals of naval headquarters are responsible for guarding the first half of the Grand Line. Such a three-legged defense situation will definitely make the entire ocean stable, and Marine's reputation will also reach its peak. Ah la la la, then I will slaughter you hard. Quote. Aokiji laughed heartily and left Luo Jia's office. After Aokiji left, Luo Jia began to sort out his thoughts during this period. In other words, he was sleeping late. That's right. Luo Jia didn't deal with military affairs at all. He worked in the headquarters fortress just to sleep late. Just when Luo Jia was sorting out his thoughts, a marine sent him a piece of information and a task. Looking at this information, Luo Jia was slightly startled. Pluton Rayleigh, the vice captain of the Roger Pirates, appeared in Area 51 of the Sabaody archipelago. Just a few words of information, but Luo Jia became interested. Luo Jia always knew that Pluton Rayleigh was in Sabaody, and he had planned to meet Rayleigh before. It was just that the Fujitora incident happened in the middle, so Luo Jia forgot about Rayleigh. It is estimated that Marine also knew that Rayleigh had been hiding in the Sabaody archipelago, but no one dared to do anything to him. After all, once he did something, it might cause a lot of trouble. Let's not talk about anything else. Marine was a bit overwhelmed by just 1-4 Emperor's Redhead. 0. In addition, Rayleigh himself was extremely powerful. If two admirals were not sent out, there was no way to suppress him. All these factors made Marine ignore it, including the world government. As long as Rayleigh did not kill the celestial dragons, they would not care. And now, this information was given to Luo Jia, so Sengoku's intention was very clear. He wanted Luo Jia to personally deal with Rayleigh, the time bomb. In fact, the biggest reason was that Sengoku could not stand Luo Jia's laziness and wanted to arrange something for him to do. Luo Jia Admiral, you see. Marine, who handed over this information, looked at Luo Jia a little nervously. Forget it, put down the information and convey it to Marshal Sengoku. I will accept this task. And remember to tell him that I want to apply for a public business trip." Quote. Luo Jia did not make it difficult for the Marine and took the task very readily. It just so happened that he had not had enough fun in the previous Sabaody archipelago. Just treat it as a business trip, and it was a business trip at public expense. It would be strange if Luo Jia did not agree. The Marine was stunned and almost thought he had heard it wrong. This task has been shelved for a long time, and no one has been willing to take it over. Originally, this Marine was just a mouthpiece and reported to Luo Jia. But he never expected that Luo Jia would really take over this task. And what the hell is a business trip at public expense? After Luo Jia slept in, he came to Sabaody archipelago. At the same time, in Area 51, a white-haired old man was coating a large sailing ship, and it was almost at the final stage. The white-haired old man was called Lao Lei. He usually liked to smoke, drink and gamble, and his coding skills were quite high. So someone gave him a nickname, called Lao Lei for coding. But in fact, others don't know that he has another nickname. Pluton Rayleigh. Ha, finally done, I have the chips for tonight. Rayleigh exhaled, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and was very satisfied with his work. Old Ray, thank you very much, this is the final payment, please count it. The owner of the sailboat saw that the coating was completed, so he thanked Rayleigh and presented him with a bag of Baileys. The Baileys in it were exactly 2.08 million, which was equivalent to a happy day. Rayleigh got the reward, put away the coating tools and turned away. This money is enough for me to go to the casino for a day. Rayleigh took out the wine pot, raised his head and took a sip of wine, his face full of smiles. But at this time, Rayleigh's face changed, and the smile disappeared immediately. Because in front of him, a man appeared, a man he didn't expect. The man crossed his arms and smiled. It was Luo Jia who came from the headquarters. I see that you like to drink a lot, old man. Do you want to come back with me? I will treat you to a drink. Luo Jia invited Rayleigh. Forget it, I'm not used to your Marine's wine. Seeing Luo Jia appear, Rayleigh was very free and easy, not lying at all. After saying that, Rayleigh drew out a long sword, revealing a peerless edge. Sword chi is everywhere, thousands of troops avoid white robes. Hey, I say, old man, you are already old, but your temper is still so bad. As long as you come back with me, I will not only treat you to drinks every day, but also take care of you for 30 years and see you to the end of your life. Where can you find such a one-stop service? Luo Jia spread his hands and shook his head. Old Lei, I still like to settle down in Sabaody, so don't bother Admiral Luo Jia to arrange it for me. Rayleigh shook his head and laughed, just like an old friend chatting. Oh, helping to place the lonely elderly in society is also the obligation of our Marine, old man, don't refuse. As soon as the voice fell, Luo Jia snapped his fingers in the direction of Rayleigh. DYY. A black lightning streaked through the void, tearing a gully in the earth, spreading all the way to Rayleigh. Is this Conqueror's embodiment? Seeing this, Rayleigh's face was solemn. Although Luo Jia's finger snap was very ordinary, the black lightning shot out by the finger snap was extremely strong. It was a special energy that materialized the illusory and abstract Haki into a substantial form. This was the ultimate realm of Conquerors. Rayleigh used the armament Haki emission and Conqueror's entanglement, and then slashed with a sword. It collided with the incoming black lightning. But the power of this black lightning was beyond Rayleigh's expectations. In the collision, Rayleigh was thrown hundreds of meters away, and he barely stopped after breaking a red tree. You sneak attack on me, an old comrade, right at the beginning, you have no martial ethics. Rayleigh barely blocked the black lightning, but a trace of bloodline had already overflowed from the corner of his mouth. However, Rayleigh was still calm and composed, neither humble nor arrogant. He had been traversing the sea for decades, and had seen all kinds of storms and waves, and he had already looked down on life and death in his heart. Even if Luo Jia killed him now, he would not panic at all, because he had lived enough anyway. Tisk tisk, a mere pirate wants to talk to me about martial ethics. Luo Jia did not expect that Pluton Rayleigh, a great man, could actually say a famous quote from Mr. Ma. This really made him laugh. Although the collision between Luo Jia and Pluton Rayleigh was very short, it caused a huge commotion. In an instant, it attracted countless eyes, and the onlookers were shocked. That's Luogia Admiral, who is known as the Invincible Marine. Some pirates were scared to death when they saw Luogia. They did not hesitate at all, and turned around and ran away. Are you kidding? Even the 4 emperors were killed by Luogia, and they, the small fish, were killed with just a look from him. Of course, there are also some pirates who are more courageous. They are very afraid of Luogia, but their dignity does not allow them to escape. Well, to put it bluntly, they have idle baggage. Quote. Could that old man be, the legendary Pluton Rayleigh? Pluton Rayleigh. This legendary title is also shocking. Many pirates recognized Luogia and were at most scared away. But with the addition of Pluton Rayleigh, they were scared to death on the spot. Luogia is the king of this era, and Pluton Rayleigh is the king of the last era. This time, 2 kings appeared here. This is heaven-defying. Some newspaper reporters risked their lives to take pictures, their eyes were burning. From the beginning of taking such a powerful picture, these reporters even thought of the news headline. Shocked. A Marine Admiral actually abused an elderly widow. Is this a distortion of human nature or a moral decline? Shocked. Luogia Admiral secretly met an old man in Sabaody. His real identity turned out to be the right arm of the former pirate king. Shocked. Luogia Admiral and Pluton Rayleigh looked at each other affectionately. It seems that they had an unforgettable friendship. Shocked. The 2 who loved each other in the past are now fighting each other. Will love really disappear? In the field, a slack line of hundreds of meters has separated Luogia and Rayleigh. The 2 confronted each other across the ravine, but in the eyes of others, they looked at each other affectionately. This time, I, old Ray, have lost my integrity. Rayleigh also noticed the situation in the distance and couldn't help but smile bitterly. I don't care whether you can keep your reputation in your later years or not. I just want to finish the task quickly and then tear down the news agency of those reporters. Luogia's face twitched and he gritted his teeth. He didn't expect that he would encounter the UC shock department of another world, and become the target of their report. Thinking about it, Luogia felt that he was screwed. Hee. I am satisfied that I can report with the famous Invincible Marine before I die. Quote. Rayleigh was somewhat amused. What the hell is contentment? Luogia cursed inwardly. Rayleigh stopped talking nonsense and decisively swung out a sword. A white crescent moon tore through, and Luogia stretched out his hand to block it without blinking. But with such an ordinary block, he actually blocked the white crescent moon. Good. Rayleigh's eyes flashed, and his figure came in front of Luogia in an instant, swinging his sword to cut. Emission flowed on the sword tip, and conquerors entangled it, turning the long sword into a black sword. A sword slashed out, as if tearing the void apart. Ding! But Rayleigh didn't expect that Luogia actually blocked the sword with just one finger. And after the fight, Rayleigh was also knocked back several meters by the recoil force. As for Luogia's fingers, except for a little white mark, even the skin was not broken. What kind of flesh is this? Rayleigh took a breath and was shocked. This time he finally understood why people called Luogia the Invincible Marine. I haven't used the eagle hand for a long time, and I feel a little rusty. Luogia looked at his fingers and shook his head with a sigh. Really? Rayleigh's eyes showed a hint of sharpness. He is old, and his physical strength is not enough to support a protracted battle. But he can still do a short burst. And with his strength, even Kizaru was almost cut. The great swordsman is at full firepower, and the lethality is not a joke. Clang! Another sword finger collision. But this time Rayleigh gritted his teeth and persisted, finally barely holding Luogia's finger and was not knocked back. What a terrible guy. Even with Rayleigh's knowledge, he had never seen such a hard body. Many people say that this era will be dominated by Luogia, and it seems that this statement is not an empty statement. Luogia and Rayleigh, one swung the sword wildly, slashing dozens of swords in a second. The other was just fiddling with his fingers, but no matter how tricky the angle of the sword energy was, it was all blocked by this finger. But as the battle continued to deepen, Rayleigh couldn't keep up with Luogia's blocking speed. The attack reached the critical point, and finally the quantitative change changed into a qualitative change, and a bright ball of light shone and exploded. Boom! A mushroom cloud rose from the ground. Luo Jia remained motionless, but Rayleigh was blown away thousands of meters. At the same time, the ground was also blown open into an abyss of thousands of meters, and the Yarkiman red tree not far away was broken. Finally, the right arm of the former pirate king was knocked unconscious by the aftermath of the explosion. At the same time, a beautiful figure flashed over, carried the unconscious Rayleigh, and disappeared in an instant. Oh, that must be Rayleigh's old lover Shaki. It's really not simple. Seeing this, Luo Jia did not continue to chase. Anyway, he had already completed the task assigned by Sengoku. After all, Luo Jia had already sent out the invitation for retirement from Impel Down, but Rayleigh himself was unwilling to go. Luo Jia had no choice. Of course, as long as Rayleigh was not killed, Sengoku would have no objection. In this sensitive period, Sengoku probably hoped more than anyone else that Luo Jia would never kill Rayleigh. And there is another point: if Rayleigh is on this island, then someone will restrain the celestial dragons. Luo Jia himself also wants to beat up the celestial dragons, and even if there is a chance, he doesn't mind killing them all. But he can't stay in the Sabaody archipelago forever, and the world is so big, Luo Jia wants to see it. Go see more beautiful scenery, meet more interesting people and things. Wasting time on celestial dragons and other scum is simply the most stupid thing to do. Anyway, celestial dragons can't run away. When Luo Jia has had enough of wandering, he will go to the Holy Land Mariajoy. At that time, it will be just a matter of one punch to kill celestial dragons. At the same time, a large group of people hiding in the distance swallowed their saliva after seeing this scene. Is it over? Opening square bracket exclamation mark quote. Pluton Rayleigh is unconscious and was rescued by a stranger. Although they had a hunch that Pluton Rayleigh was not Luo Jia's opponent. But when it really happened, they still couldn't help but marvel. Luo Jia is really the strongest marine in history. Just as Luo Jia was pondering, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. The person who called him at this time was no one else except Sengoku. It's true that you can't talk about people during the day and ghosts at night. Moshimoshi. Quote. Soon, Luo Jia connected to Den Den Mushi. As expected, as soon as the call was connected, Sengoku's nervous voice came from the other end. Luo Jia, what did you do with Pluton Rayleigh? Sengoku couldn't help being nervous. If Luo Jia just captured Rayleigh, it would be fine, but if he killed Rayleigh, the consequences would be troublesome. It is estimated that the remnants of Roger's pirate group and the Red Hair Pirates will not give up. Even if the person who killed Rayleigh was Luo Jia. Even if Luo Jia's strength is invincible. They will not give up. Once a war of this scale is detonated, the situation in the whole world will develop in the direction of great turmoil. Especially in the current Guo Sea, when Marine has not completely suppressed it. If a great turmoil occurs at this time, it will definitely trigger a series of chain reactions and eventually evolve into an uncontrollable situation. At that time, it will not be something that Luo Jia can solve alone. Unless Luo Jia has the power to suppress the whole world. But is that possible? Sengoku denied it. How could a human have that kind of power? Rayleigh, don't worry, I didn't kill him. Quote. Luo Jia responded lightly. ... Hearing such a word, Sengoku's head was black for a moment. Do you know how to respect your seniors? But he came back to his senses and thought of Luo Jia, a troublemaker, who didn't cause any trouble this time. Sengoku was surprised. Could it be that Luo Jia gradually matured? Then Sengoku would finally feel relieved to hand over the position of marshal to him in the future. Ha ha ha, I've said that Luo Jia's personality is like me. He must have killed Rayleigh. Just then, Garp, who was holding a large bag of senbei, laughed out loud. Quote. Quote. Sengoku had no choice but to hold his forehead. He was really annoyed by Garp's personality that was afraid of chaos in the world. Wait, Luo Jia's personality is like Garp. Sengoku couldn't help but shudder, and he immediately retracted his naive thoughts just now. People like Luo Jia don't cause trouble for a day, but it doesn't mean that he won't cause trouble for the rest of his life. The matter of passing on the throne must be cautious. If Luo Jia knew, because Garp's unintentional words caused Sengoku to not intend to pass the throne to him. If he did, he would probably strangle the old man on the spot. After completing the task, Luo Jia returned to the naval headquarters. During this period, Luo Jia invited Aokiji and Garp to dinner, and he was too lazy to report to Sengoku. Anyway, he had already explained almost everything on the phone. Sengoku had no way to deal with this, or he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He really couldn't control anything about Luo Jia. Luo Jia didn't even take the 5 elders seriously, let alone him, the Marine Marshal. If it were someone else, even Sengoku himself, if he dared to act like this, I'm afraid he would have been sanctioned by the 5 elders long ago. But this person happened to be Luo Jia, and he was someone that the 5 elders couldn't afford to offend for the time being, so the world government and the Marine could only turn a blind eye. On the other side, Zhao, after the 3 of them finished their meal, Luo Jia went to find Kizaru to get in touch with him. After all, the 2 of them were like-minded and could discuss many topics related to certain aspects. If it were Aokiji and Garp, they probably won't let go. Moreover, Luo Jia had an intention to find Kizaru. Kizaru, this guy, lives a more comfortable life than Luo Jia. Especially after Fujitora took over the military affairs of the Wangguosi and Aokiji was transferred back to the headquarters to take over part of the military affairs, Kizaru's life took off directly. Not only that, this guy also successfully took charge of the scientific forces, and his status in the Marine rose sharply. Don't mention how comfortable his life is. Because Luo Jia has a good relationship with Kizaru, he got a batch of new weapons from Kizaru's scientific forces first this time. Just report to Sengoku, and this batch of new equipment will be in hand. Luo Jia used part of this batch of new weapons to equip the G1 branch base, and the other part to support Fujitora's G9 branch base. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.